Good evening and welcome to the March 19th, 2025 budget work session. I motion to open session at 4:30 p.m.
I second.
All in favor?
Favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Administrative 2.01, approval of agenda. Did everybody have a chance to look over the agenda? Take that as a yes?
Yes.
I motion for the Queen Anne's County Board of Education to approve the March 19th, 2025 agenda as presented.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we have our current board action items, 3.01, generator replacement at Kent Island High School by Mr. Derek Barraclough.
Good afternoon, Vice President QACPS, board members, executive team, Dr. Salins. For the record, I'm Daryl Barraclough, Supervisor of Facilities and Design for Queen Anne's County Public Schools. Bringing before you this evening the bid award for the replacement of the existing generator at Kent Island High School. The existing generator at Kent Island High School is over 20 years old and has encountered a catastrophic failure requiring complete replacement. Project bid documents were prepared in-house and made available online and through the eMaryland Marketplace on January 22nd, 2025. The scope of the project is basically the replacement of the existing generator with a new 150 kilowatt generator, and that will connect to the existing infrastructure at the school. On February 14th, a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting was conducted via Google Meet. Administrative requirements regarding the submission of a bid were gone through with the various bidders that were online. Bid packages were received on February 25th with 7 bidders submitting bids. Bids were publicly opened and read aloud at 2 p.m. Upon reviewing the bid packages, Eastern Sales and Engineering Company was the lowest responsible bidder with a base bid plus add alternate 1 for a price of $76,660. The bid alternate 1 is the inclusion of 12 months of service maintenance on the generator. That was included in the $76,660. The bid results with all 7 bidders are shown on the second page. I'm seeking approval to award to Eastern Sales and Engineering Company. Any questions?
So this is an emergency, correct? We have a new generator.
We have a rental generator that is there currently. I don't want to say it's an emergency because we don't have a generator. We do have a generator. It's an emergency from the standpoint that we do need to get this approved because it's about a 14-week lead time on the generator. So that coupled with the fact that the bid opening was on January 22nd and my bid hold period is 30 days. So if we didn't make tonight's meeting, it could potentially force a rebid. So
Okay.
that's kind of the emergency part of it.
And since it was coming from FY25 local CIP, is this going to have to take the place of something else, or was this already accounted for to be getting replaced?
It was already accounted for.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else got anything?
That's good.
All right. I motion for the Queen Anne's County Board of Education to approve the award of a construction contract for base bid plus alternate 1 to Eastern Sales and Engineering Company of Baltimore, Maryland to replace the emergency generator at Kent Island High School. The fiscal impact is $76,660.00. The budget source is local FY25 CIP funds.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have 3.02, budget presentation and approval.
Yes, so
This evening, Mr. Watkins is going to be joining us and sharing the budget presentation with you. I have to just say thank you to Mr. Watkins for all of his hard work and efforts to make this actually happen. As you know, we were not prepared more than a summary sheet, and he has taken the time to not only learn it, but work with a former employee of ours to make sure that he has it built out for everyone to really be able to articulate where the deficit is and where potential opportunity is there. So I'm going to turn it over to him and say thank you so much for all of your efforts to help us understand and work through this process tonight.
Of course. So for the record, Rob Watkins, Interim Supervisor of Finance. Good evening, Vice President Capes, board members, Dr. Salins, Dr. Kibler, executive team. So tonight we're going to go through a version of the draft that you guys have seen, at least the first page. I prepared tonight some slides for us to kind of talk off of because I thought it was a good opportunity for us to kind of get a good picture of the budget. The draft budget before you, if you guys flip to the fourth page, that is the budget that you guys looked at. That page was the budget you guys looked at the last board meeting. There's been adjustments to this page as we work through the budget book. So obviously we took the opportunity as we create the budget book to kind of outline the costs that were on this sheet, and they are now in the budget book. What you are looking at today is a budget book that has a deficit to it. Let's talk through how we got to that point and start to go through some of the numbers. So, and along the way in the presentation, I've noted where you can find this in your draft book. So the projected revenue increases for next year, fiscal year 26, we are projecting the state share of costs to be for $1,426,613. And at this time, we can also identify that the county has notified us that $7 million of local funds can be added to our budget. That creates a total revenue of $8.426 million, okay? I also want to take a moment to highlight that one of the things that the states are pushing back down to the county budgets are state contributions for pensions. So Grants County notified us that they are going to get a $1.3 million bill for a part of the state pension on behalf of Grants County Public Schools. That $1.3 million does not show up in any sort of revenue that allows us to use. It doesn't even show up in Grants County Public Schools, but it's worth noting that they are contributing an additional $1.3 million to support Grants County Public School employees.
I just wanted to add to that one. I think that when we start as residents get our letters from the commissioners and things, if we stay at this 7 million, we're actually going to get letters that show like $8.3 million coming to the school system because of that 1.3. I believe that they will continue to lump that together. So we will just all have to continue talking about that 1.3 never coming through our books at all. It's just for them to set aside for the retirement costs.
So when you look at our current fiscal year, the total budget was 118 million plus. Our projected fiscal year 26 budget is 129,476,379. That creates a projected total budget increase for next year at $11,039,818. And so what does that mean? So it means that when we take that projected budget increase and subtract the projected revenue increase, that leaves a deficit in our budget book at $2,613,205. Okay, so at this point, I want to highlight that the budget book that we are presenting in front of you is still a work in progress. So I've been on the job for a couple of weeks, and we've done a lot of work to get actual calculations and to try to bring the values to as actual as they can. But we're still working through gathering information to complete the budget. I want to let you know that everything past page 9, the stuff when we start getting into each of the category budgets, everything past 9, is aligned to the total budget, $11,039,818. $11,039,818. I was a math teacher. I can read numbers and everything. So with that said, I want to bring us to page 9. So page 9 is the difference between our current fiscal year budget and our requested budget for fiscal year 26. So last time we met, you were anticipating a salary increase of about $3.8 million, and you were presenting a furlough alignment of salaries for this school year of about $2 million. And there were a couple other pieces in that page that were also salary. What we were able to do was go ahead and look at each of the categories and present them in a way that we are able to see how the increase of the budget is allocated to each of the items. So we're expecting $5.8+ million to be added to salaries and wages. And if you look over in the other charges, there's a green box there, and that's the fixed charges. So that brings us to $4,021,647. So when you add those two numbers together, that is essentially salary, wages, and fixed charges. And that is what creates the bulk of this increase this year. It's the people. I'm gonna stop there and just kind of talk through what are fixed charges. So these are all the items that show up in our budget book for fixed charges. Retirement costs for pension, our contribution to our employees' pension, FICA taxes, tuition reimbursement shows up here. Our health insurance and our Marathon Health shows up here. Retiree insurance costs, all the different insurances that we're responsible for, background checks for new employees, and our legal trusts fund. So when you think of fixed charges, they're all attached to our employees, the benefits and other pieces of that salary. So what we're looking at here is a total increase of $11,039,818. And then you see the increase at 8.4+ million, and that deficit balances it out at 11,039 million. All right.
Can I just want to make sure that everybody understands where the deficit number is coming from. So basically, in simple terms, we were talking before of a total ask of like that $10 million, right, from the county commissioners. This, getting to that 2.63 million, it assumes that we're not cutting anything from the budget except like the synergistic contract, all the employees that we currently have carry over into next year. So we have not talked about any of those cuts right now. It basically represents the deficit we have from when we were talking about $10 million going down to 7. I understand that that's really 3 million. It's because we pulled 2 more things out. We pulled out the MOI increase that we had proposed on the summary sheet at one time, and we also pulled out the tutors that we had talked about adding back in. So those are the only 2 things that came out to reduce what would have been a $3 million deficit down to like that 2.6.
That was part of the email that the board trying to give you something for thought for tonight of, bringing to the table of what you thought about that. We went ahead and out of the gate pulled them out, but that doesn't mean that the board can't put them back in.
Yep.
So when you look at the proposed increase between fiscal year 25 and 26, this is how in a graphic it lays out. So about 90% of the increase is tied to salaries and wages and fixed charges. The remainder is tied to supplies, materials, some contracted services, and some other charges. Okay. Next, I point us to the page 9 in your budget book if you're following along, the proposed fiscal year 26 budget. And this outlines by category and by item where the money is being calculated from to get to the total budget, the total 129 million plus budget, okay? And we can talk through that some more, but I want to give that graphic to us. So when you look at the proposed budget for next year in total, 59% of the budget is in salaries and wages, 25% is in fixed charges, about 9% is in contracted services, about 2% is in supplies and materials. Other charges represents 3%, 1% for each equipment and transfers. So that's how this lays out.
Again, in those 2 like green sections, that's our people.
Everything associated with them.
Yes.
Not just their salary, but all of their benefits.
So in total, about 83.5% of our total budget is allocated towards people. So that brings us back to the big talking discussion of the day is the deficit that exists in our current budget. Okay, so at this point, I think it's wise. Let's open the floor up for some discussion and let's talk through it. I want to remind us that the total budget and by category is the full $11 million. So the only place that we have adjusted the budget is in the spot where it says deficit of $2.6 million. So we have work to do to kind of go back to that. And the budget book is it's a work in progress. So we have to go back to the table and figure out where these cuts come from. Today we had an administrators and supervisors meeting, and we presented the budget to the administrators and supervisors today. We engaged them in an activity to kind of look at the budget, look at their houses, and try to figure out what things are insulated, what contracts, what resources, what things could we look at and cut from the budget. And they came up with some pretty good ideas, things that maybe require a little bit more work to go look into, things in the budget that maybe we're not using as much as we think we're going to use this year. So when you look at each of the budget lines, we are going to go back to the table and figure out how to bring some money back. The budget analysis is still not working. I've been here for just 2.5 weeks, so it's going to take a few minutes to do an analysis, but we are working on that too.
I have a question.
Please.
So when you were talking about that, oh, sorry. When you're talking about increases that people are what's representing the biggest cost of the increased spending, and when going through the draft of the budget, I can see in numerous areas all across the board increases in salaries. How many of those are, I know with the teachers, it's contracted that they are to have that. But there are increases, I don't know how much per person, but I think I understand when I'm reading it. But if we were to eliminate any salary increases for those that are not contracted to do so, is that an option?
Sure. So
Like if we're in a time of crisis, like,
all of the employees, all the full-time employees are under a negotiated agreement.
okay,
So teachers are Unit 1, administrators are Unit 2, and then there's 3 support contracts that exist. So all of their salaries are pulled off of those scales.
okay.
Okay. Can I point us over to page 4? That's the colorful page at the front that you guys looked at last time. Let's look at this and talk off of this for a second. I'd like to highlight some of the adjustments that were highlighted here in comparison to the one that was presented last time. So, and I'm a color code guy. It stands out to me, so I color code stuff. Drives my teams crazy, but so look at the orange. So the top salary enhancements, when you looked at that last time, that was $3.8 million. When we went and looked at actual salaries and we projected everyone's step and everyone's increase in next year's contract, that came to $4.069 million. Okay, if you go all the way down to the bottom where it says fiscal year 25 budget alignment, that's 1.336 million. That is much closer to actual calculation for what the furloughs cost the district this year. So when you add that plus the 4.069 million, you get just over $5.4 million towards salary enhancements for those 2 lines. It was presented to you as $5.8 million. When we went and did the calculations, we also applied FICA tax and other pieces to the salary that would have increased costs when we did that. That projection was pretty close too, but it was a little bit under what it actually was. So when you go and look at the fixed costs associated with salary enhancements, the $451,000 was a little bit less than the $468,000 that was in the one that was presented to you. State retirement stayed the same. We did find that there was a little bit more cost to the Marathon Health contract than we anticipated, so we added $120,000 to that contract. When you go back to the orange and you look at the other pieces to the salary enhancements that show up in this spreadsheet, you'll see down towards the bottom, the 212. That is a mandatory community school salary. So that money is going to offset the cost for the community school coordinator at Sellersville Elementary School. It's going to go for the new Sellersville Middle School community school coordinator, and it's going to offset the cost for the nurses at each of those schools. That money comes to us in a fund that we can apply to our first fund. However, it is aligned to those 4 positions, so we have to spend it there. So it's captured in the revenue, but it's allocated out into the budget. When you look at the next one, the $150,000 for national board certification, that money is for salary enhancements for the people who are gaining their national boards this year. And Dr. Knoll, I believe that we pay $4,000 of the $10,000 enhancement, and the state pays $6,000 of the salary enhancement. And then the summer school cost of $36,000 there is to enhance and support growing the summer school program next year.
I think we had NBC backwards.
It's
but
backwards,
that's okay.
yeah.
Okay, is it backwards?
Yeah, we pay 6,000 and the state pays 4. It's a 60/40
Oh,
split.
thank you very much.
I kind of just want to go back to one point that I think is really important.
Please.
In that we are going to see changes here. If you notice, MAVE Insurance, Workman's Comp, Property and Liability, you can see one of them went to 0 right now. That calculation was able to be made, and it looks like we're not going to necessarily have an increase there. The other two are a placeholder right now until we get final numbers. I think it's important for the board to understand that this budget is just snapshot in time, and every single day, you're like this year, every day our budget changes because we have somebody who may retire, go out on maternity leave and not return. They may resign from their position. We may have a project, that we had encumbered funds that came under budget. We may have a project where we encumbered funds that came over budget for a piece of equipment or something like that. So a budget is always a snapshot in time, and we'll always have some variation to it. But at this point in time, I feel like we're as solid as can be on the numbers that have been presented to us. But this will not be finalized until June, correct?
Correct.
For the 1.5 for the placeholder, is that due to rising costs and like overall everything? So we won't have a number with that. Do you guys estimate for that
We do.
We did. It's a 10% this
from
year.
last?
10% over last year, and that number is provided to us through Bolton. They do an analysis, and they provide it to the county and to us equally because we're partners in that together, to give us better power, I guess, the more the merrier type of concept. So we get those numbers directly from the company. We don't project those ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, we were actually projected, we had a 7.5 marker in there, and we've recently got updates from Bolton that we should have a 10% marker in there, so we moved it to 1.5.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we dive into Marathon Health?
We can?
Is that a contracted item? Is that in the teacher's contract? Or is that just on top of their insurance already?
That's on top of their insurance already. We are engaged in a contract, not only with Marathon Health, but also for the lease of the property in which we utilize for those services. So the actual building itself has a lease, and then we also have a lease. And the county and the public schools together are on that lease.
So my question is, we have a $1.6 million increase on Marathon Health, which is added on top of the teacher's insurance that they are already provided.
Correct.
It's not a requirement within their contract.
No.
Is this kind of something that we're giving because it's a good program?
So the intent of the program is to flatline the 10% increases year to year that we're getting on our healthcare premiums. So with Marathon, we were able to fix costs and then therefore project costs. And it takes about 3 to 5 years for you to actually see that happen in real time. So eventually in that 3 to 5 year mark, we'll start getting a kickback back from our insurance company that will help to resolve that. So where we're paying right now, the 1.5 million, which we just started paying because we had written a grant that did our startup for it. It actually did the build out for the facility, all of the equipment that we needed. And then it started paying that per person expenditure that's attached to it. And that was through LEADS money. So that's just hit us now. That's why it's in addition to our budget this year, even though we've had Marathon in the past, because we were using grant funds to be able to supplement that. But you're not going to see that projections until 3 to 5 year mark. And then what will happen is we won't see the increases at 10% or 8%. We likely will see something more along the lines of maybe a 1 or 2%. And then we'll also, because we're fixing costs, be able to get a return on our investment. So we'll get a check from them that will apply to our per employee expenditure for that particular thing.
Just so I fully understand, because that was a lot to unpack.
That was, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yes.
No, you're good. I'm just gonna kind of reiterate some things.
Sure.
So we have our basic insurance, or the insurance, the health insurance.
Correct.
We decided to go with Marathon Health, which is fixed costs. So in doing so, in 3 to 5 years after paying, if we wouldn't have gone to grant, we would have still had to pay the 1.6 million every year. Our regular insurance, instead of going up 10%, they're only going to go up a minimal amount. But is that in a contract with them, or are they just saying that because they could still end up
That's
being
in-
4 or 5%?
That's in the actual projections, which is like what they believe to be like a realized amount at some point. You know, they have the projections, they are national based, so they have years of data, and they applied that data specifically to Maryland, and actually looked at locations through Maryland. So there's like 4 more that have already opened. There's 4 more that are in the process of opening, but that was all strategic. So this was like a more of a Maryland plan of action of how to overall get our insurance costs under control. That's the strategy. And we have been working collaboratively with the Maryland Associations for Boards of Education, MABE, to be able to do this. This was not a Queen Anne's County go off on their own and kind of make up, you know, what they think is the best. This is really something that was driven at the state level, and is morphing throughout all of the districts in the state of Maryland.
So does it depend on how much it's used with the amount of employees or staff that use it? So if more people use it, you see more of a savings, but if
Yes.
less people use it, we're still going to have higher increases?
Yeah, that's accurate. Yes.
Okay.
So
But I think last meeting you said we only have 27% of folks using this.
Yeah.
So if we continue down the path of less than a third of folks using this, what is the cost saving really going to be? Because from what I hear, it's convenient for folks that live here, but we have a lot of teachers that live outside the county where it's not so convenient.
well, and it will become convenient for them because where they're located, they'll actually have a center as well. So we've entered into MOUs, reciprocal MOUs with the different centers across the state, so that if they live in Talbot County is actually going to be opening their own, that they could access it in Talbot County. So yes, right now our goal this year was 35%. We haven't gotten there. We're at 27, but we've also increased about 5% already this year. We still have a little bit of the year left. Not sure that we'll meet that 35% mark, but I think we're going to get much closer to it. The county is a little bit ahead of us. I think they were at 32%, just over 30%, maybe 31.7 or something like that. We also have reached out to Chesapeake College to add another partner, because the more people that we have, and our center was designed to grow, so the more people we have, obviously our costs come down. So we meet on a monthly basis. We have an engagement plan, and we have been working collaboratively, specifically with the county in order to increase that.
So they're paying a portion of whatever Marathon's fee is as well.
They do as
So
well.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Because we look at it from this perspective as it's $1.6 million.
I agree.
At this current time, I know we're knowledge now, we're working with the commissioners and such, but at this time, we look at it $2.6 million in deficit, kind of like a luxury because we've already got health insurance. What year are we in with this current? How many years are we into Marathon Health?
This is our second year.
And we still haven't, like, that's a hard part, is we still haven't even gotten to a third of the employees. Is it,
Yeah.
do we know why we haven't gone there? Is it just the knowledge of the ease of use? Is it the teaching or educating what it is? Is there a reason why we haven't gotten more folks? Because the more we get in, the more we can save, right?
Absolutely.
So-
I think part of it is that we were the first ones in Maryland, so people were a little bit of, this is new, I'm not really sure about that. So as every center pops up across Maryland, they're going to backtrack and be like, oh, well, Queen Anne's has been doing it for 2 or 3 years at this point. And I think you'll see that comfort level. I think that people who have a primary may be uncomfortable thinking I have to switch my primary. We've shared that they do not have to switch their primary, that they can use the facility for whatever their need may be. It might be labs, it might be, some medications, it might be a physical, it might be a well checkup, it might be, a sick visit. So we've just been trying to really build the awareness around it. We have had the doctors go out to each school, participate in faculty meetings to kind of share and answer questions. I think it's just going to take us a little time. As I said, their goal at the end of year one is between 30 and 35%. We're at 27. So I think that Bolton doesn't think, and Marathon doesn't think we're way off base, that we are trending similar to other districts who have implemented this throughout the nation. Can we do a better job of engagement? Absolutely, 100%. I think we're continuously working on that. As I said, we do meet monthly and come up with different engagement strategies. I know Beverly went to the Engaged conference last week, and she quickly emailed us all to say she has some new ideas and great ideas to help to grow. I do think it's a little easier sometimes for the county people to access it, just simply because some of our employees have more of a structured, I have to be in front of students and I can't necessarily always change my schedule. So sometimes it might be more challenging for them to access it, but it has a lot of resources. There's tele, there's mental health, and it's just continuously spreading the word. Yes, the more people that participate, and I think if you ask anybody who's participated, they will 100% say it was an amazing experience. I felt like my needs were very much met. I didn't have to pay a copay. I had great follow-up. It's just getting people to get that first experience.
Right.
At what point do we call it? Like, at what point do
Well,
we
we have
say
a
it's?
contract for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So
That was my next question. Is
so we'll continue to
what is-
gather data.
What is the projected ROI on this, and when is the break-even point? Because we say 5 years before we start seeing our insurance give us any point. So 5 years at 1.6 million is $8 million. Okay, so at 5 years, we're $8 million in the hole with this program that not even a third of folks are using yet. Could be more. I'm throwing numbers out there. This is so at $8 million, and no offense to insurance companies, but I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Insurance companies say, oh, our projection will be, we only increase you by 1% or 2%. But we see what insurance companies do. Sorry, I just don't trust sometimes their projections. That's me, that's not the board here. So they could still be like, okay, well, we decreased it, but it's at 4%. Or we don't know that. But say we're at $8 million and they only do 1%. So we'll throw in 14 million or 13.5 or whatever, or 1.3 million. Now you're looking at another 4 years, 3 to 4 years on top of that. So our break-even point is 8 to 9 years down the road when you even start this, if that's even the break-even point, if we get the folks in there. I just see this to be a long, long process of a lot of money from our operating budget when we continually cut positions. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's an awesome program, but at the same time, it seems a little bit more like a luxury. And at $1.6 million, that's 16 positions. We're more than halfway filling this deficit. I know we have a contract, so I don't know what the stipulations are getting out of it or talking to the commissioners. I don't know. I just know this seems like a very long, drawn-out process before we even see a return on investment. And we're taking insurance companies' projections of saying we're only going to see 1% or 2%.
Right.
I mean, that's my thought process on
No, and
insurance
I
companies.
appreciate all of that. We knew it going into it, that it was a long process. We also knew that changing the contract as it relates to how much employees get for their insurance. Previously, an individual would get 100%. The contract now changed that anybody who comes in that's an individual, they have to have some skin in the game, so they pay 10%. I believe the county's 15%, and we're trying to get in alignment with them. So we knew going into this that this was a long-term project. We knew that, we have to hit it with many different angles. 1, trying to change the contract. 2, trying to get, Marathon up and going. 3, knowing that it's a 3 to 5 year mark where you're going to start seeing that, adding additional partners. So I do think that there's a lot of dynamics here, and I completely 100% understand where you are and what your thinking is. I just don't know that we would be able to change that. We are locked into a 7-year contract. The county is locked in with us. We would have to investigate, and I don't know the commissioners would support that. I think we would have to ask them and see. I'm very happy to do 2x2 with board members to have like just a focus session on this of what are all the ins and outs. I can provide the contract for you. I can provide you with data, national data. I can, lets you see the projections, which Bolton is really like a third party that gives us our projections. Our actual Care First is our insurance company, so there's some division there that helps us to feel like those projections are more adequate, because I understand what you're saying, like, I don't want the projections from the company that's, right? So Bolton is actually a partner that helps us to, I think, hone in more on what those projections are going to be. But I'm absolutely happy to, meet 2 by 2 or 2 by 2 by 1 and to be able to answer questions and provide additional information for you to sift through.
It just feels like bad timing is what it is,
It is.
more or less.
I don't
Especially with the blueprint, the updated sound. It just
do not
feels like a
disagree with
program
you.
like this was just the most inopportune time that kind of came to us.
You're absolutely
And
right.
now
And
we're
we had
struggling
leads
to make
money.
our side.
Right.
But we also use the grant money to pay for it, and this is the first time we're seeing it, so it's
We're only
kind of
year
a
two,
sticker
right?
shock, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So the grant money was only for 1 year.
It was actually 2 years, because we did a whole planning of a year where we actually had to find the facility, build the facility out, because we literally had to like reconfigure the facility to make sure that it met our needs, that it had a lab space, that it had examining rooms, that, those types of things. So we had to build it out. Then you had to buy all your equipment and all your technology. So that was kind of year one. We didn't kick off until August. So this past August was 1 year. So we won't be at our 2-year mark until August.
Have we looked into any other grants, considering this is a state type situation outside of Leeds, but kind of looked into other grants that could kind of fund this, since it's coming down from the state, it's helping the employees, it's marathon, it's
Yeah.
coming even through MABE, all this other.
No, I mean, really good point. And we do our very best to look at every grant possible. But I will tell you that we haven't seen one. And if we do, we absolutely will be applying for it. But trying to get partners on is also another way. That's not grant money, but it's another way to reduce those overall costs. And the capacity for the center in and of itself, we can, as I said, accept those partners. So hopefully we can do that and add some partners that will right out of the gate kind of reduce that overall. And then maybe we can couple it with some grants. I mean, there might be grants coming down. We know that funding right now is challenging. And so we're out there trying to beat feet to get any grant monies that are possible. And we do have a lot of grant monies that come through. We could probably do a whole meeting just on the grants that come through, because it's a lot. But no, I very valid that it's like the perfect storm, right? It's like we were doing great things for employees. Our whole intent is to reduce our overall costs, and then you get blueprint. And so the timing absolutely was really harsh.
One more question.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. What about other counties being involved in our center that don't have their centers yet, and they basically come on as partners until their centers are grown? Then they're helping them get the understanding, the knowledge behind it, and such prior to their centers being built. How many other counties alone on the shore have Marathon Health or projected to have them in the next 5 years?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point that we certainly can investigate. As I said, we just signed into a reciprocal to the existing ones, and we will continuously do that as the next center comes up. But a really good point that we could actually literally say to districts, Talbot County is getting ready, I think, to start their build. So you can say, hey, you can offer it to your, could we do that? I don't know. That's something that we could look into. Could we ask and say, hey, you can access our center for X amount of money until your center is open? That's a great suggestion.
And not just Talbot, but I mean,
But yeah, no, that's what I mean. But I just know
And
that.
then even when Talbot builds theirs,
Yeah,
it
I know
just
that
helps.
they are in the process of it. I don't know where they are in the process. Like, I don't know when their open date is, but I know they're in the process. So that's what made me think of theirs. I know Wacomico's is already open and running. I know Washington County. I mean, they're all through. They're strategic. They literally did strategic of, this is where we're going to first start opening them in this order. And then we'll double back around to the Eastern Shore and add another one, and then we'll go to the, you know what I mean?
Is it
So,
projected all 24 counties are going to have a center, or is it?
Don't know that I know the answer to that. Yeah. Do you know, Michael? I don't know that I've ever.
Cecil is looking, I know Talbot is getting ready to open, Wycomico already has one.
Yeah.
And there's several on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah, I don't know if they're projecting everyone, but we have that information from when we very first started with them, because I remember there was like a scatter plot, like map that showed them all of the recommendations and in what order. So,
Do state
think-
employees use it too?
no, they're just our employees. So if they're employees of Queen Anne's County Public Schools or employees of Queen Anne's County, they are eligible to use the services.
What I'm asking, can state, like, so state employees, because they're located all over the state, if you're a state employee, can they use the marathons throughout the state? And if not, could we have them come on as a
Maybe.
partner as well?
I mean,
And then you're getting more state funding too.
Yeah.
And that might help all the counties at that point.
That might, I mean, I know that they're not eligible at this point, but that doesn't mean they can't be eligible. And these are some good ideas for us when we, as I said, we have a monthly call where we look at every single bit of data and projections and everything. So some really good suggestions on, maybe some other out of the box thinking to try to increase our usability, essentially, right?
Because at the end of the day, it mitigates our costs, mitigates our budget,
Yep.
and helps not only us, but it can help employees that don't have that opportunity as well,
Yep, absolutely.
counties and state.
Yeah.
How do you know the numbers of employees that are using it?
Through our monthly meetings, we get it through Marathon.
And I've heard some employees might not want to use it because they're worried that then you'll have their information. Or, I'm sure that's not true, but I just
No.
want to bring it up.
No,
Or if
yeah.
they take off sick and didn't go. So I guess,
Can you clarify, just so I understand? Like, what is it they go and they're afraid that if they go, then
so
that
they
information
just,
will be used?
I've heard that employees are afraid that if they go and use it, that their records or whatever would be
Yeah.
known to
They're being
the
tracked.
board. Right.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But
Is that
there's so many
be
laws
violating-
around that, so I think it would be good if we just
Yeah.
explain to employees
Yes,
that
HIPAA.
we
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
We do
We just
not.
know the numbers, but you
Say, 'cause
cannot
that'd be
tell
highly
which
illegal.
employee.
No.
Okay.
And it's the same similar data that we actually get from Care First. So for instance, they'll let us know this past month, what was the number one thing that our employees together collectively were seen for. It might be asthma. It might be vaccine. Yeah. So they'll give us that data because it helps us. So if like diabetes is a big one that's been several months. It's been high. So that gives us information so that we can provide some professional development or some support systems within our community to address diabetes. How do you manage diabetes? How, give people tools to do that. So it just is a guide for us to help our employees better. We get no data. And as I said, it's very similar to the data that we already receive from our Care First as well.
Is there any incentive we can give employees to start using it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been doing, as I said, some engagement things. We did every month at this point, anybody who signs up, their information kind of goes into a hat and they pull one. And then Marathon has, because it's HIPAA, you got to be careful. Marathon reaches out to them and says, here's a prize for you. Can we either get a testimonial from you? Were you happy? That kind of thing that we can share with other people. So that's just one thing, yeah.
And Marathon Health funds that aspect of it.
Yes, they
So
do.
It's not like you have to spend money on Marathon and then a prize for them. to
No,
use
no,
it.
no. They fund everything and they do all the giveaways and they're all healthy things like a yoga mat or, or a watch to track your steps and things like that. Yeah.
So what are the hours of the center? Because you mentioned, if this is for county workers and employees, it should be Saturday hours and after hours and morning hours. Do they have that?
We do actually. So they're in early 2 mornings a week. They're stay late 2 evenings a week. And then it's a half day on Friday. Now we've also talked to them as we add partners, and then we have Tela that has different and people on call and things like and what we'll do is we'll link in, we have a couple flyers, we can link in the flyers to our actual minutes so people can have those, we can send them out. We've talked as one of our strategies, how can we extend those hours, and basically we need more partners and then we can extend the hours because then we can maybe do Saturdays or something, like a Saturday from 9 to 2 or something. So we're constantly looking at though, how do we extend more opportunities for staff to be able to utilize services?
Wait, I have one last question, sorry.
Sure.
Who's the we between us and the county? Like who works on all this?
So HR
Okay.
is because it's all about insurance and that's really housed in our HR department. So not only does Dr. Knoll sit on a lot of the calls, so does Teresa Steinheis. She is our benefits specialist. And then, as I said, Beverly from the county, she sits on, and then she has 3 or 4 people on her staff that also tend to kind of jump on and
So they're working on the same.
We're
trying to
all
work
working in the same, if a flyer comes out, it comes to both Beverly and me and everybody who, oh, and Michelle Morissette, she's on our team as well. So we, if they're going to send out a postcard or a flyer, they'll send it out and allow us to provide feedback before it gets published and sent.
And the building that we pay for, what's the share of that between us and the county?
It's by percentage, but based on how many employees. I can't tell you the exact cost, but we have like 1,250 employees. The county has 806, I don't know.
700.
Yeah.
Not by the employees that use it, but by the number of employees we have.
Total.
No, I think it is by the number of employees that use it. Yeah. There's a per, but those are, as I said, if the board wants to have more information due, we're
that would be
happy. We
good.
could, I feel like I'm a little off. I don't want to quote numbers to you and be wrong. So please take that if you look at what I've just said. But happy to, as I said, provide the contract to you, meet with you, answer any questions about services, times of services, and everything like that. So, yes.
What percent of, are you done? I'm sorry, is that going on? If 27% of our employees are using the marathon, I know the Chop Tank schools, do we have a number on what percent of staff utilize that during the day?
You mean the school-based health centers? I don't have a percentage, but I know that there's about 145 staff members that have utilized the centers since their inception. So that could have been one time, that could have been two times, but typically, on any given day, they're serving students the majority of the day. If they can fit a staff member in, they will, but students come first.
Okay.
Yeah, students come first.
And then the contract language with them, since we do have a low number now, does the contract language state as we get more people on? So essentially, we're losing money now, we're not even breaking even. Does the contract state, once we get to a certain point, then we will flip the script and we'll be saving money? Does it state like how that's all spelled out, or is it more of a toss-up?
I haven't put my eyes on the contract for a little bit, so why don't you let me get you the contract and
Okay.
we can certainly answer that question for you. Yeah, I just don't want to misspeak without having the contract in front of me. But happy, again, to put it on a further agenda, or happy to meet individually or 2x2 type thing, to get more information to the board.
So we have 5 years left on that contract then?
At 5 years from August. It will be 2 years in August, right, Michael? And again, it's like we opened a year ago in August, so this August will be our 2-year anniversary, so it would be 5 years from that point.
I think it was 5 years from inception.
Maybe, okay, I don't know. The contract will be clear enough when we pull it up.
Can we mark whenever we do have our combined joint meeting with the commissioners, we put on a note to bring this up in the conversation with them?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do we have that schedule yet?
Mm-mm.
Okay. You said something while I was out.
No. When we were meeting with them a couple weeks ago, we brought it up and they said it would be a good idea to do quarterly or whatever. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'd be a good discussion with them at the open meeting with all 5 of each of the commissioners and us.
I agree.
Can we,
I didn't realize how entwined it was with them as well.
Yes.
Right.
is it okay, do you guys have any other questions on this, or are we allowed to ask questions in the book? Of course. I didn't want to.
Done with Marathon Health?
Let's drop it for now.
I didn't want to
Just a large expense, that's all.
mess anybody up in case they still had questions. So I know, we got rid of Seduxo, where everything's in-house for food services. Where are our food service costs in this book?
It's a good question. It's not in this book.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
food service is its own budget in a different fund.
Own
So that's a.
budget in a different fund? is that
Yeah,
what you
so
said?
basically it would be its own separate budget, and then hopefully we're going to get a budget for you to look at for that here soon.
It's completely separate. It's not
Yeah,
within our.
so it's not in the operating budget. It's in, so this is a Fund 1 budget, there's a Fund 5 budget, and so in that budget would be where the food service lives.
The employees and everything? like
The
all
the
costs?
employees, all the costs of food service, they all get charged. So all the kitchen managers and the folks that are working in the kitchens, they're all funded to that.
Will we
supervisor.
see Sodexo compared to now? Will we be able to see the 2025, 24, like what the proposed budgets were compared to what they were?
Oh, sure, absolutely. We had a contract with them, so it was very easy to articulate all of their employees and, you know, at this level, because they had several more employees at the central office level than we do now, so.
So where does the money come from for the other budget, for the food service?
So in that budget, the federal funds that come to support the program have to be separated from all the other operating costs in our district. So a good chunk of the money comes from that. And then each of the schools has an account, a cash account, in which they take all the cash funds that are collected from the schools and they go into the cash accounts, and they're all reconciled here in finance.
Okay.
So basically, the answer is, where is the revenue coming from? It's from the federal funds that come to support the school lunch programs and the dollars that are coming from the schools through the school purchases.
Okay.
And then, of course, the expenses, the biggest expense are food costs. And then the other pieces of the pie that go to contribute to operating that program, equipment, things in the kitchen, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And we have yet to know if, I know that we got rid of our Sodexo contract. When we see the numbers and if it appears to not be a huge cost saving benefit, in fact, more, is it easier to go back to Sodexo or stay this line?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
No, we can go and enter back into a contract with Sodexo, but I don't know that we're going to see that it would be more, because just in staffing at the central office level, I'm sorry, Sid, I'm going to have to put you on the spot, but they had a nutritionist, dietitian.
They had one supervisor, a dietitian, and then two other kind of like regional individuals. Within the state of Maryland, there's only one county that privatizes food service right now, and that's Talbot County, still through with Sodexo. There are a lot of hoops and hurdles that you have to jump through to get a private company approved through MSDE to provide food services. But we can get you all that information. Basically, food service is self-op, self-funded, based upon that. And when you're looking at it, no school system in the state, you're looking to break even in food service. You're not, you can save some money here and there, but the overall big picture of food services is breaking even and not, going under that. And that's, I can't speak for other states, but the state of Maryland, that is how it is.
So we were able to implement the program by eliminating a very top position, which was over $100,000, as well as each month you have contracted costs, which we don't have anymore because we're not contracting services out. So we were paying for those services, and we no longer have to pay for services.
So we were
because
paying
we're doing
their
everything
employees?
in-house.
So their employees that was sitting at the central office with you guys, we had to pay their employees?
We paid them and they paid their employees.
Okay,
So
yeah,
they-
that's okay. That's what I was, got you tracking. Same thing.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
don't we have a contract with them? And then they just take it.
Yeah, they took care of everything, but we paid a pretty price.
You were starting to make it sound like we were paying them on top of the contract at first. I was kind of.
But we, as I said,
Right.
we were paying for that.
Correct.
'Cause we're
In a roundabout
contracting.
way, yes.
Yeah, we're paying for that. So, when it was brought to us, and we can actually give you the estimates for the year of the cost savings that we went into it, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars. So for cost savings.
When we see salary enhancements and the food supervisor, director, and all that, is that coming, the salary enhancements, their salary and all that, is that coming out of the food?
That's coming out of the food service budget, correct?
Okay, so none of that salary enhancements in here for even the director that's part of the central office?
That's correct. They're all in Fund 5.
So since it's federal funding, since everything's kind of up in the air with USDA now, is that,
I have to get back to
Gonna
you
be-
on that. Yep.
okay,
So we did check on, so one of the pages in your in your book is about the restricted funds. We're not going to talk too much about that tonight unless you want to. Restricted, that's page 6. So here are the restricted funds. This is not food, but these are the other federal dollars that are coming in or restricted state funds that are coming in. And you can see we put a placeholder in front of there. The state funds are a little more accurate than the federal funds. We did ask our MSD rep to give us some actuals for next year, and I don't think they're in a position to give those yet. So we did make our best guess to figure out what that looked like. Sometimes the federal funds come in, especially in the restricted funds, much after the June 30th deadline. So remember, everything you're looking at in this book, so the stuff from fiscal year 25 was what it was at June 30th. So when you see the federal funds from last year, there could have been some adjustments to that. Because the book's always changing. So constantly as people come in and out, and as we're adding things and taking things away, as we're finding savings, as we're finding more costs, the budget is a living, breathing thing. And believe me, I've learned that a lot over the last 2 weeks.
I'm glad the state got deep in the pockets for the fine arts funds.
We really appreciate that and
Yeah.
stretch that dollar.
That's a whole whopping $1.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, state get real deep with that one.
It's embarrassing.
I do have a couple questions on the restricted funds.
Yep.
Just more general information as to what those are for, because I know that they have to go to certain things. So like the Stop School Violence Grant under federal funds, and then other funding, Safe School funds. Are those things that like Mr. Savory can use? Are those things that like when they're doing all security things, they are grant funded? Like when he comes in and says, this is grant funded, that's this.
Sure. Those are dollars that are specifically allocated for specific things that are in the grant.
Okay.
That is true.
I see that Family Support Center, if we've discussed this, that now that's not happening in 2026. What is the Family Support Center and why is it going away? I'm just curious.
The Family Support Center is a federally funded grant that is there to serve students who are not school-age students. So it's very, very similar to our Judy centers, if you've had an opportunity to see one of our Judy centers. So their grants have been funded for 25 years, I guess, somewhere around in there, and they have been flat funded. So that means with every increase that we have in our contract for salary enhancements, it gets hit to the grant. So what has happened is the salary base has outpaced the grant because the grant money is flat and hasn't increased. So what happens then is there becomes a gap and a deficit. So then you have a grant that's not self-supporting itself. So then our operating budget has to fill that gap. So over the last 3 years, we've had a deficit where we've had to fill the gap. So last year, in the start of the school year, I said, and it was, the gap was $75,000. And I said, well, we don't have $75,000. So Angela Giebert was able to secure what was called a GAP grant. So to get us through this year so that we could plan for how do we find someone else to support this grant. So social services will be supporting the grant. So the program will still go on, but social service doesn't have to abide by our contract. So they can set salaries where they want. They don't have to go by a contract for us. And so they'll be able to meet the guidelines of the grant, which for that particular center is 4 positions. And then you have to have money to do all kinds of things that they do, from field trips to materials of instruction, furnitures, and all
So
that.
services are still being extended. It's just not, we're not responsible or paying for it.
That's exactly right. We will not be the agent that's holding that anymore.
Understood. Okay.
Social services will be.
Can I say something just to that?
Sure.
We are going to run into in the
Oh, yeah.
near future with our Judy centers as well. So I think we all know, just like the Family Center, how much the Judy centers mean to our community, and we're going to have to address that probably in the FY27 budget.
Yeah. So
Local funding
Right.
to support the Judy Center.
So we have 2 of our 3, like since I've been here, we added a Judy Center, but 2 of them were very well established before I came. And so those grants are going to be, because you have more experienced people in those positions, then obviously their salaries are comparable to that. So so then that makes the grant. So for instance, and I know this number, I don't know why off my head, but $330,000 that they have been funded for each center for the last, as long as I can remember my career. So we know that you have costs that have inflation over the last 25 years, and salary enhancements over the last 25 years that eventually, as I said, you eat up all the grant with salaries and then some, and then that then some comes to us and we have to fill the gap out of our operating budget.
The unfortunate part, the way that the Judy Centers and the Family Centers called Patty Centers in the blueprint are talked about, it's talked about increasing the number of those centers, but not increasing the funding associated. So there will be statewide more funding going to these, but not on an individual center basis. It's to open up more programs, but not support them.
Well,
with
and part of
increased
that is
costs.
because the $330,000, similar to Blueprint, is written into the law.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go to a legislative, and during a legislative session, there would have to be a proposal to change the law. So it's a lot of grants, they're based on formulas, they come down from federal government to state, and they're either based on enrollment or they're based on your economically disadvantaged population. They might be based on your multilingual language student base, special ed. All of those have different funding to them. But that particular grant doesn't. It's not a formula based. It's a flat in the law. So you have to change the law. And I think that's why it hasn't changed, because they haven't taken the time to go change law.
Okay. On the same path of just getting some background information on some of the stuff, I see that in the restricted funds, special education has a decrease of funding, as well as infants and toddlers. What are the reasons for that on page 6? Just so I understand why
Again,
those programs.
I want to be wary of those numbers because those are our projections.
Okay.
So, and they're based on what actually happened this year so far. Those numbers are going to come in from MSD at some point on their timeline. It could be before June 30th. It might not be before June 30th too. So that number, I want to be cautious about, because in the grand scheme of things, it's a small part of the total budget.
Yeah,
I
just was curious if there was something that had changed in.
I mean, a
funding.
lot of the, like special ed specifically, that's a formula based and it's based on your enrollment. And so, you just don't know, while we've had an increase of 35 students, do we have a class that has, sometimes we have pockets to where we have several students graduate all at one time. So, you know what I mean? In some classes we have more, some classes we have less. So likely, I would assume that might just be because of the projections of enrollment. Maybe we have a higher percentage of special ed students exiting this year.
Okay.
But I appreciate where Rob is, like, let's put the brakes on and not make too many hard conclusions on that.
Totally fine. I just, again, trying to understand how
Sure.
these things happen.
Yeah.
And then last, on that page was, the rural investment fund. Just, there's not a,
my understanding it's
amount.
going away. It went away this year.
Is that from the county or the state?
I do some from the state.
From the state,
Yeah.
okay.
We're looking at these numbers. We see approved for FY25. Is that the approved number from last year's budget, or is that the actual number we got?
Right, so that was the number that was in last year's budget book, correct?
So can we see what the actual number was instead of just the approved
Well,
number?
we can't because we're not finished the school year, but we can when we're finished the school year. We could give you an actual for 2024, but right now we're only in month 8. I don't know.
Month
yeah.
9.
9, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're in month 9, so we couldn't, it would not be an accurate,
Because if we saw actual
wouldn't be
numbers, we can
accurate.
see.
yeah,
Where
the
we're at.
actual numbers wouldn't be accurate at this
Right,
time.
yeah.
I think what you're asking for is not necessarily the actual spend, but once we finally got the actual numbers from the state of what we were going to get, what is that number?
Correct.
We should be able to do
We
that.
could give you that.
that we
Yeah, I
can-
Yeah,
thought you meant
that's,
how much
so
we
I
spent
saw
to date.
approved FY 2025, that was approved. Is that the approved budget that the previous board?
It was likely the same situation that we're in right now.
Yes.
Right.
So like, I can speak
Gotcha.
intelligently to Title I because Sudlersville Middle School is a Title I school. So that grant dollars did not come in before June 30th in totality. So when that notification of grant came in, it would have been after this would have been published. So what you're asking for is, hey, can you go tell us what we were actually allocated this year from these things?
Correct.
We can
That we
definitely
can
do
do.
that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because 1.293, what was the actual?
Yeah, sure.
We can give you all that.
Okay.
We can definitely do that.
And then the next question was in line with where you were going is, do we have numbers where we're at currently to see if we're where we're at? Are we going to be under? What sections are we over? Because if we start seeing that from a 5-year trend that we continually, can we actually see where we're at now? So
We have expenditure reports, and Dr. Kibler, I want to say the last expenditure reports went out to them.
But these weren't on there.
Okay. So
The
we
grants
can,
are not.
oh, that's right, the grants aren't on there, my apologies. We can definitely get that information for you.
And it really depends too, like, they won't necessarily, just for when we do bring that to you, they wouldn't necessarily follow like a nice uniform distribution throughout the year.
Yeah.
Just depending on like Title II, we were sending a bunch of teachers to a conference one month, you'll see like a big jump or whatever. And yeah, but we can definitely get you
Yeah, we can
where we're at
definitely
in the process for sure.
I have a question. On the unrestricted funds on page 5, just trying to get an understanding, in 2 categories, there's going to be an increase in funding. And I guess I was just wondering what plans would be for that. Special education has roughly, an 800,000, I don't know, 875, didn't do the full math, under $900,000, increase in special education. So this would be more for the superintendent. And then pre-K is a roughly like 1.5. Does that go to instruction? Does that go to equipment? Is like, how do we find out where that goes, within those programs and what categories
What
they,
lines are you on?
sorry, I'm on page 5 and it's gonna be, so the state share, special education and the pre-K, and then they're repeated in the local share, same lines.
Oh, so you added the 2.
Yeah, sorry, I did the math. I'm just looking at
I was looking for.
sorry, I'm just looking at it going, okay, it's nice to see funding for those, just what do they plan to go to, just,
These are, like, pre-K, it would be expansion grant, which would give us an opportunity to expand our current programming that pays for teachers, it pays for equipment, it pays for materials of instruction. What am I missing?
so they're funded differently, so like, right now, there's no materials of instruction for 2026, but that gets funded differently with pre-K.
Pre-K
Let me
is its
try
own beast,
to
yes.
step back and start from the
right.
first part of your question, if
Thank
that's all right, because that's what I was like thinking about. So special ed, you can actually see, if you go over to page 9, you can see that we have like an $821,000 increase, like all going into special ed. And you can see like where that,
Salaries
is
and
going.
wages.
It's mostly salary and wages
Got it,
for
okay,
employees.
thank you.
So that one stands out because it's its own category based on how the state of Maryland tells us we have to budget. Pre-K, we see the big jump this year, and you've noticed it over the past few years, we have a large jump, and that's just because of our expansion. So we had a 3-year expansion to go from half day to full day. Bringing Centerville Elementary School this year on the full day brought an extra like 65 students. So that's why we saw that huge jump in pre-K this year. It was funded initially through the pre-K expansion grant, which was back on the grant page we were just talking about. So now that money is actually in the unrestricted funds for having those students here. You won't see pre-K in the budget book necessarily spelled out because that falls into the staffing and MOI, like categories 2 and 3. It is separate from the like the special ed, who's kind of the special category there.
Okay.
Now, what I will say is interesting, you're getting to a point of the blueprint that we have to start tracking these buckets that you've pointed out and proving that we're spending 75% of every dollar that comes in that individual category. We are actively working with Mr. Watkins, his team members, my team members, to get that set up so that we can see to make sure that we are spending that appropriately. I can tell you in the examples you pointed out, like with pre-K, number of classes, number of students, that money's going right back in to support those classrooms. The state of Maryland, we used to be able to, they broke money down by these buckets, but you could kind of sprinkle it wherever you thought necessary. With the blueprint, we were going to have to prove that 75% of every dollar.
Okay.
And we're actually working with an outside agency through the Accountability and Implementation Board to help us get our systems set up to make sure we're on point with that.
So is that why you see an increase for blueprint coordinator, concentration of poverty, which went from 0 to having numbers?
Those are blueprint
mandates that we have to show.
Yep.
Right. So that's
So
the
blueprint
change.
coordinator, they, every district had to hire one of those. Thank you.
That was his original hire.
Put a plug in for Matthew here. The concentration of poverty is the community school. So that's the Sudlersville Elementary School and then bringing on Sudlersville Middle next year. And I would say with where our level's at, I think unless things change, we'll probably stop at those two schools with the thresholds. I don't know that another school will qualify for concentration of poverty moving forward. They might,
They
but
might.
right now I'm not sure.
Churchill and Graysonville are the two that kind of teeter-totter. They sit right on the edge, but we just haven't been able to get them there. So maybe eventually, but not right this minute. But Mr. Watson, if you could talk to us a little bit. I've had some questions outside of how, why are salaries for certain employees over several different categories, or why are some things over several different categories?
right.
And I know why, but if you could just articulate it for everyone, because I know that that's been,
It was on my list, so.
Okay,
I'm glad
good,
We're
yeah,
getting to it.
yeah.
Here
So I know,
is-
I had a couple people ask me, so I thought
So
it was
this
a
is
good
the teal
question.
book.
The teal book.
And there's also a baby blue book that's tied to the blueprint. So in this wonderful document, it really outlines the structures of the categories in the budget. So it outlines what things can be charged to category 1 administration, to category 3 instruction, to category 6 special education. It just goes through and says you can charge this kind of teacher or this kind of service or this kind of material or this kind of other charge, transfers, or whatever it is. These are the places they can go. So this I learned. Ms. Robin Landgraf is one of the former CFOs that has worked here, and she worked here for 30 years and retired about 6 years ago. She's been here helping and learning, helping the learning curve, so to speak. So as we start to tie into this, our system is tightly aligned to the teal book and what's allocated to it. There's always years when we go through and we look at different charges and decide, do they really belong in a category 2 or should they be in a category 4, whatever the case may be. So when you look at that, that's what we are given directional where it goes.
Can you give us an example of an employee that would be across multiple categories?
Absolutely. I'll use Dr. Kibler's salary. So Dr. Kibler, his salary is distributed over a couple of different places. So he's in instruction, he's in special ed, he is in, there's one more, Matt, do you remember?
Student services?
Student services, thank you very much. So,
That's it?
so from a employee standpoint, no, they don't ever know that. It's just, they get paid as their salary. But when you go to prove the things like in the blueprint, the distributions then get reported out to the different boxes that need to have assurances. So you're right. And when we talk about the blueprint, the way the money is coming in right this very second and how we're treating it when it gets here and how we're reporting on the back end is going to change drastically in the next 12 months, for sure. So we're going to have to start thinking about specifically where the funds are going, and then ultimately, how did it get down to the school level? But ultimately, there's a good number of people that have split distributions in their salaries. We also have people that are split grant funded and local funded too. So some people have part of their salary grant funded, and some other folks have their salary locally funded. We also have people that are 100% grant funded.
And that's going to get even, not necessarily that the public would see it when it's in the aggregate, but as we go to that blueprint reporting, like Mr. Watkins is talking about, and we have to report not only by the buckets of revenue that we were just talking about, but we have to show it by school, like the money following the students to the school. There will be like a teacher that has like a split assignment across schools, like they would be split in that report, their salary across 2 different schools.
So you mean like our district
Specialists.
specialists
correct.
that support more than one school?
Some of
they
our-
would be split across.
Some of our multilingual teachers.
Yes.
Our school bus drivers who serve multiple places would be split as well. I did have another question outside that I thought would be beneficial, and it was, can you give us the percentage of increase that the county is giving us and what the percentage of increase the state's giving us?
Sure. So if you go back to this, that's a good place to look. But so essentially $7 million of the total operating budget from last year is about the county's giving us about 9.3% more. The state increased their revenue by about 3.33%. So we definitely are experiencing state funding shortfalls when it comes to the things that they're mandating with us.
And if we add in the 1.3 million for the pension, that I know doesn't come through our system, that percentage would rise to,
Plus 10.
okay.
That the county is
That's correct.
footing the bill for.
And do you know their total revenue for the district?
The Queens County.
Yes.
I don't.
I believe they had don't quote because I don't have the number in front of me, but I believe they said they were expecting about an 8% increase.
8%, that's what I had heard. Okay, I just wanted to know if, yeah. Just kind of putting that in perspective of the county's revenue increase compared to what they're giving us. And I'm sure that we'll soon be able to see, once they come up with their draft budget, of what percentage the sheriff's department's going to get increased, what percentage is Parks and Rec, what percentage, are all of the players at the table getting.
Sure.
And then we would be able to compare it to what we're actually getting increased wise.
Okay.
Can we go over, since we get questions on this all the time, maintenance of effort? Because I think there's some misconception from the public on what it should be, what we got the year before, and,
Tell them what it should be.
right,
Yeah.
What's that number?
yes.
Not what we're getting.
You want me?
You're good, Dr. Kemper.
Yeah, so maintenance of effort is basically, they look at from the previous fiscal year, the amount of money that the local government gave you divided by what your enrollment for that year was. And they come up with a per pupil expenditure or a per pupil revenue, however you want to look at it. And so that per pupil dollar amount carries over to the next year. So however many students you have in the next year, you multiply that by what that per pupil expenditure was the year before. So a lot of people think in the top of their mind that maintenance of effort, if we got $70 million last year, we have to get $70 million the next year. That works if you stay flat enrollment, but that has not been the case necessarily. So that's where we're at. We're plus 2 students, I think, this year. So our maintenance of effort roughly went up. What they had to give us, to go back, if you have it off the top of your, but I think it was around $15,000 increase.
It wasn't much. It was right around $7 million.
So then on the county's end, they're just held to that maintenance of effort every year, but have always been committed till they'll never give us less than,
They have absolutely been
or
committed
year
to that.
before, okay.
Yes.
And so what they try to point out is like when they give us, and we have to give them kudos here.
Absolutely.
When they give us that $6.2 million, that's resetting their maintenance of effort level higher. They can't go back on that number. So this is, when they talk about their projected growth and things, and they're going ahead and putting that $7 million in, knowing that that's a new floor.
I also think it's important too, there's another level of that maintenance of effort. So for instance, for special education, we have to maintain a level for their services as well. So every single school, when they get their block grant, they don't just get an allocation for, say, materials of instruction. They also get an allocation for special ed materials of instruction to make sure that we maintain for our special education students the services that they need, that we can't just cut that or use those funds for something else. So that also lends itself to, I kind of feel like the blueprint has added a lot of different buckets that we have to monitor very closely when we've been doing that in the area of special ed.
CTE as well.
For CTE, special ed, and ML, we've been doing that for a very long time. But now we have to add different layers to this, but we have had a little bit of practice in it, at least especially in the special ed area.
Did I answer your question?
So I pulled up the certificate from this year. So essentially, their required local appropriation for this current school year, fiscal year 25, was $68,050,297. And when you look at your budget book on page 5, the local share was $75,085,219. So it's essentially, it's a little over $7 million that they contributed for fiscal year 25. That was over maintenance of effort.
Their total requirement that they had to give us last year, their maintenance of effort went down.
Was less.
They could have given us $800,000 less in the fiscal year
Last year.
25. That's why when they say they give us 6.2, in some ways, they could argue they gave us an additional 7.
Yeah, 7, because it's like 800,000, yeah.
And then the $7 million this year.
I have a question if anybody else is, I don't want to jump in front. Sid's not here, I was gonna put him on the spot, but maybe. He'll be back.
He knew.
He knew, that's why he got up.
Left. I'll wait till he comes back. Do you want me to ask now and just we can fill?
Yes.
So we always have the buses coming before us, before approvals. Where in this budget book do we see things like for buses and then our leased vehicles?
Sure. So if you go, it's on transportation. So find the page number here. Just go to 35, page 35. So this is where all the charged services and salaries go to. The front page kind of gives you a picture of what all that looks like. So in this particular one, this is a very, obviously a very largely contracted service category. Page 36 talks about the salaries of the people associated with it, the bus drivers and so on and so forth. And then if you look at the contracted services down on page 37, so this is where you can see that, in this case, this is where the $424 from that front page comes in. So if you notice the first line, there's a $424,000 increase. So if you go back to the page 4, that's where that number got attributed to. And then some of the other things that got pulled in from the requested increase got placed here.
Looking at that, just throwing this out there, the dates need to be updated on there. They're a little behind.
The dates.
It says the company's contract runs through.
Oh,
June
yes,
30th.
thank you very much. Yep.
Should be 2025, right?
Yeah,
Is that
thank you very much.
2025?
Or 26.
Or
I thought it ends this year.
Hey, the good news
Well, we
is
have
that I
two
wasn't the
different-
first one to
that's
miss that.
So this, so they're talking about on page 37 in the bus contractors.
Yes.
It says we currently have a 3-year contract that runs through June of 2022, but where is our contract right now, Sid?
So right now, we are negotiating a contract with them. We've had meetings before. We were supposed to have a meeting 2 days ago, but due to the number of field trips going on, the presidents of the LLCs couldn't be here. So we are rescheduled for next Tuesday at 9:30 to meet with them. That is a placeholder. Generally speaking, for the past, I'd say, the past 2 contracts have been both 3-year contracts. And what we've done in the past is we've aligned it to the CPIU based off of the 12 months prior. So we would look at December of, the prior year. That would give us the number so we could then budget it properly for that and know ahead of time and not be waiting till like the end of the year to budget that number. But that number, also includes, it'd be the mileage rate, the hourly rate, and then the PVA rate included in that.
But the current contract ends when?
It ends
25?
June 30th.
25.
Yes, ma'am. And then we're negotiating another 3-year deal.
Gotcha.
Sometimes when you're purchasing buses, the bank would like to see, not a single year contract, but a multiple year contract to know that, those buses are going to be there and an investment is worth that.
Sid, can you touch base since I try to bring up questions that we get, so if the public's watching, they can kind of get the full instead of what they hear from somebody else that may not be the truth, but explain when we have a bus contract that comes before us for either a new or used bus, and then it's got the PVA in it, but there's not an actual number that we approve. How do we?
So there is and I have a spreadsheet that lists all the way back to like 2010 of what the PVA is. The issue, and when you buy a bus, if it's a used bus, and just say it's 2022, they want to buy a used bus. The PVA is aligned to that year. They wouldn't automatically get the PVA for, say, FY26 or FY25. So it's based on that year the bus goes in service. So what I have in here now is a placeholder. And when you look at, we're still, like I said, in negotiations with the contractors. So right now, when you're buying a bus for 26, I'm estimating what we're negotiating right now, what it's going to be. But it is a fixed amount that they get for the rest, for that bus. And basically the PVA is used as part of the formula for the bus drivers. So again, they get paid an hourly rate, a mileage rate, and then a PVA. And that's standard across pretty much the state of Maryland, except for the school systems like Talbot County. All of theirs they're employees of Talbot County Public Schools. So we have contractors to provide regular transportation, and then the county bus drivers provide special ed transportation along with the athletic teams transporting those back and forth. But I can put that on there. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Yep.
We always get questions as far as, whether it be contract drivers or county drivers. And then they're like, oh, you buy the buses for everybody, or do the contractors buy their own buses that you guys reimburse them? And how
Yes.
does that all work?
So what happens is the life of a bus is 15 years. When they come to us, if, they try to get it to maximum 15 years. Obviously, if you're driving a bus and you're going up north, you're putting a lot more miles on the bus. So if it gets to like a 12-year breakdown and they can demonstrate that they're showing, need to replace that because of the repairs are starting to exceed, what they have invested in it, then they also qualify for that. But most of the time, the contractors take it to that 15th year. Now, also remember, I think it's important to remember, when you order a bus, like, there is a significant delay time by having that bus manufactured. It didn't always used to be that way, but, right now is when you want to start putting in for a bus to come in next year, if not, earlier. And then, based upon of all the spreadsheets, we take out and we budget in for, hey, it's going to be an increase of PVA. Say, is it going to be 5 buses this year? Is it going to be, 3 next year? There's a different breakdown. So we go through and calculate which buses qualify to be replaced on the contractor side. On the county side, the buses that we purchase for ourselves to transport the students, we try to keep it consistent across the years, because if you don't, we would be going to the county commissioners 3 years from now and asking for 9 buses to replace, which is a significant cost to absorb in 1 year. So if we spread it out 2 to 3 buses over the years, it is much easier for the county commissioners to fund those. But the PVA, like I said, is calculated with the CPIU along with the hourly rate and the mileage rate. So that has worked for us the past several years. For the simple fact we know in December when it comes along what that budget increase is going to be. So there's a ton of spreadsheets involved in it. It's not just an arbitrary, we're just going to replace this bus, And along with that, we're fortunate because we would take all of the cameras and all of the radios and take them from the bus that's going out of service to the bus that, is going in service. Along with that, each out of the 4 LLCs, they are allowed to have 8 spare buses in case a bus breaks down. They can pay for that. I'm sorry, they can rent that from the other person. We're not paying a PVA on a rented bus or a spare bus. And then there's several unpaid spare buses that they have also. There's no PVA associated with it. They use those basically for field trips and items like that, which fall under our MABE insurance coverage.
Thank you.
How many buses does the county own?
I believe it's 26. Actually, if you hang on one second. Are we,
Have you ever looked into any electric ones?
Yeah,
There's a
no.
$17 million grant that Maryland put out for school buses.
we have
Yeah, but one
applied,
bus costs $17 million.
Oh, does it? Really?
we
You
have
gotta pick
applied
between
for,
heat and the bus breaking
it's
down.
really-
'Cause
Right.
out here in
So
the
it doesn't
rural-
even cover it?
I don't know.
I
I don't know.
so we've applied for that. Those grants typically go to larger jurisdictions and more metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
And the other issue with that is you need to have the infrastructure in place. So picture the warehouse where we have 26 buses providing electric to recharge all of
You
the
just get
buses.
one. One they buy.
And where's it going? It's not going North County, I'm gonna tell you that now. No, it is not,
Run out.
right?
Bundle
Run
up
out
your
of steam.
kids.
It would lose the charge before it got halfway done on the route.
All right, so no electric buses then? I mean, it just
We can
seems
go.
if they're gonna give 2 or 3 million, how much does an electric bus? And they pay for the infrastructure and you can get tax rebates. There's so much money out there right now for.
I think
electric.
Leave our kids
475,000.
stranded. No matter, as long as you get the tax rebates.
525, I think is what the last time they came out, like a number per bus.
Okay, I mean, this grant, I found it when I was just, anyway, it's, they'll give up
You can
like
send it
2
to-
million. Okay.
Since we'll take a look at, like I said, we've applied.
For next year, I mean,
several,
it just
yeah.
closed for this year, so. And, yeah, there's like a limit to which county can get it, like how much each county can get, so.
They got enough roof space, just throw some solar panels in there too.
Oh my
There you
Go
go.
for, like the shortest route.
And we have tried to keep the cost down, downsizing some of our county buses, especially ones that are going across the bridge, to, different schools for
Those are
special
the
needs.
smaller ones.
And instead of having, the large bus going through there, the smaller bus, and that is
yeah,
also a cheaper cost operating this going through there.
I do have a question. I was looking at these field trips and we've increased the budget by $10,000 for field trips. We got some amazing sports teams that are doing a lot of good stuff and they are needing a lot of transportation.
And fine arts, actually, too.
And fine arts. I mean, our children are amazing.
They are.
Should we increase that? Or
Would that go
Should
into
we
the
think
athletics or
about-
is that part of transportation?
it's right here under transportation, under field trips.
Is that including, is field trips including the athletics or is
No,
that separate? Yeah,
It's separate.
that's what I was asking. Is it two separate? Because
It's
field
two
trips isn't athletics.
True. But don't we pay for those too?
Yes.
Yes.
So
there's
do
certain
we,
field-
should we, the point is, should we consider increasing that budget, given all the things that we have going with our students?
That is something that needs to be increased each year, that has kind of been neglected over the years of moving ahead with that. But yes, that is something that
It's
needs
in
to be
here as an
increased.
increase of 10,000, but that.
Right, but is that enough?
That was kind of based on, like, looking
at-
at trend data and
Yeah.
usage, so those numbers were estimated out based on the information we had.
That's where where we're at in the current year budget, what's been
Right.
spent.
Right.
That's why I would like to see, I know, I think some of us other talked before the meeting too, is seeing where we're at spending, where the spending was in FY '24, where we're at, see if there's a trend. Are we actually adding these increases to be enough? Because if we're not, we continually go over budget and we're not
Right.
properly planning. How can we approve a budget that we're not actually seeing the numbers where we're at now, if we're actually below or ahead of it?
And I think Mr. Watkins.
I'm going to help with that.
Perfect.
So that's exactly right. So that's exactly what we're doing. So the budget analysis is looking at what we spent this year compared to what we were budgeted, to understand how the cash flow is happening in and out of those accounts, and then compare it to what's happening in previous years. That's definitely something that this office can take care of.
And
It's going to take a few minutes to get
Right.
this year's analyzed, but
And it was Ms. Cape's point a couple meetings ago too, about rather than saying we keep going back to the approved, what was the actuals? Right. That's something that Mr. Watkins and I are aligned on. I told you last time I was, and I've shared that opinion with him, and he is too. And that would be moving forward. It's just in 2.5
Gotta get it
weeks,
done.
we're moving as many mountains as we can, and we're trying to get there. On the field trips in general, it's probably not enough. What we did this year is we've had to limit for like the band and chorus and things like that to district continuing to pay for like district festivals and all state competitions and local parades and things that are within Queen Anne's County. If a school band would want to do their own competition or go to a parade, like there was a school that wanted to go to Talbot County for a St. Patrick's Day parade. I had to say no to it unless they could fundraise or use their own band boosters for it, because we just don't have it in here to support those things.
Are they allowed to go with their parents for transportation, or they're not allowed to do?
School event.
No, because of the liability.
Yeah, our MABE, that would be considered high risk.
Right.
So, I mean, if they're transporting their own child and only their own child to an event of some sort, that you have the right to transport your own child, and there's certain legalities
fill out- you have to fill out
around
a
that.
form.
And Sid, I'm looking to you because there's.
You're correct.
certain- But other than that, it's not allowable because it's a high risk.
Yes.
Okay.
So then too, the schools are allowed to, back to your point, if there was something they wanted to go to, they could always reach out to the parents and even do like a GoFundMe or donations to recoup that money, which I've seen a lot of them.
Which is, yeah, we do a lot of that stuff.
X amount of money, $5 a kid or whatever it is, 'cause you don't.
And
don't
the
know which
bands do that for like,
instance, how much it
Yeah.
is.
they want to go to a big competition, like there's one at Hershey Park, I think they go to like every year. So they do fundraisers throughout the year for their transportation costs and the entry fees and lodging and things like that.
Outside of this, a little bit different, is there a way we can start advertising and verbalizing that more so the community knows? I just feel like a lot of these fundraisers, the community doesn't even know about half of them.
Unless the people are at that school. or
Right.
I was gonna
parents.
say, or the parents.
Because I feel like a lot of
Hit
the
you
community,
up.
a perfect example was our soccer team last year. trying to get their state championship rings. I saw the GoFundMe. Everyone's donated, but they still were a couple $1,000s short. I just don't think enough of the community is getting to see that, which then goes into tail is now when we're working on our students, if we don't have the budget for them to be able to go to certain functions, I feel like as a board and as an executive set, we should still be doing our due diligence to help them get there in one way, shape, or form, whether that is advertising, whether making those announcements at the meetings or such, because if we can't fund it, we should be able to help them find a process to fund that situation.
Yeah, we did come up with a model when I came in where for like those that are going to like all state and offshore or special types of events like that, where the district, we basically budget like a third of those costs, a third of them come from the school itself, and then a third from the parents to try to spread that wealth out so that we can all kind of partner together so it doesn't have a burden on any one given entity. So we have tried that approach, and that's actually been fairly successful with a lot of the opportunities for students.
I have a couple questions. I'll make them quick. Athletics, athletic trainer is listed in two different categories. It's listed under instruction and operation of plant.
We found that today,
It is.
actually, in our exercise.
There's actually a conflict in the Teal book
Okay.
about where that should be charged to.
Okay.
So I think it's charged to two places essentially. So, but we'll go back and the things that potentially could be adjusted in one of the future
Yep.
budget books.
How many do we have?
Two.
Okay.
And but we also have,
Just making sure.
Yes.
Because we were having troubles
We were.
before,
We were.
trying to get one,
We're
let
doing
alone
great.
we got one at each school. I'm good with that.
Two amazing.
Yes.
That's good.
I was trying to wrap my head around that last night. Why is it being
two
being
spots.
charged to the plan operations? It doesn't really compute for what an athletic trainer is to what the plan operation
And in all fairness too, over the last year, we've switched it to where they were not locally funded and now they're locally funded. So we did have a shift in that over the last, this was the first year that they were locally funded, correct? Or am I? Second year, sorry. So this is the second year. So we did have a shift in how they were funded, which puts them in a different part of the book.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, we just saw that today. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, no. Also, Arise, it's listed, well, it's not listed on there as Arise. It's listed as a tuition non-public placement on page 28.
correct.
Is that, so that's how it's not, it doesn't go under instruction, like the.
Wait, what
category-
page are you on?
Sorry,
It's a
28.
category. What page are you on?
28
Right.
of the draft. It's down under transfers, tuition for non-public
No,
placement.
that's not what that is.
Yeah, this is.
Oh, then
for
what is that?
special
So
ed
that is
students.
for students that need services outside of our district.
Those are those special contracts that you actually review in closed session because they're individual students, so we can't do it in open session.
Gotcha, okay.
To different schools over the bridge and things like that. So these
Okay.
are for
You're gonna
students who
find-
have significant needs that
We
we can't address those needs here.
But
We-
Arise and the teachers and the principals, those are all lumped in like instructions under instruction.
they're all-
Okay,
Except for the special education teacher that is under special education.
different bucket. Okay, gotcha. I didn't
The
understand it.
administrator of the program is in administration.
Correct.
The teachers fall under regular
Okay.
gen ed teachers.
I also see just underneath of that, Special Education Consortium,
What page are you on again?
same page, 28, just directly underneath the non-public placement.
So that is our share of the cost. So there are things that exist amongst many counties, and I'll use our audiologist as one of them. We just don't have a need enough to staff our own audiologist. So we share him with a couple different places. So those costs represent the cost of the audiologist and
OT,
and the OT
PT.
person, PT.
So for someone, as a parent of a child with special needs, so when we were getting services through infants and toddlers, is this is it all coming through these types of funding?
Depends on that.
I believe
the
there's-
person
Depends on
delivering the
need.
service.
Okay.
The service being
I just didn't know
provided.
if that is, when I see PT, OT and stuff, how that
It's
works.
basically a shared cost.
Okay.
So the special education department reaches out to those individuals and they schedule their time and their time is allocated based on what the consortium decides.
Okay.
So being on the shore, we have actually several different organizations that are ESMEC organizations, where they're the Eastern Shore ESMEC. And so you have one for Energy Trust, we have one for special education, because we're so small that a lot of times we have better buying power or we can share services. So
Okay.
it's really advantageous for us to participate because it lowers our, if we had to have our own OT, PT, that kind of thing, it would be a lot more cost to us if we can share it because the need is so small.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's necessary.
I do
at the
that
same
does make
time.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll try to make these quick. I saw on there that there is zero equipment repair for things like microscopes and band equipment repairs.
What page are you on?
Oh, gosh, I'd have to go back.
Oh, sorry.
I was just looking
Zero
at,
increase or zero at all?
there was nothing. There was nothing requested for 2026.
So here's what I've learned about that. So oftentimes that is lumped into a different category.
Okay,
So sometimes that might get lumped into a contracted service for instruction, one of those services. There's money there to support fixing stuff when it's broken.
okay,
But I will also share, though, for many, many years prior to our team being in place, a lot of those needs came in year-end funds. So if you had a fund
that's true,
balance,
too.
then the supervisors would say, well, I really need these novels, or I really need, additional science equipment. I really need this. And they would have a priority list, and then however much fund balance money they had, Sid would get a piece of it to be able to do some local projects, but then everybody else would get individualized pieces of it through their curriculum. And that's really not an advantageous way to go about things. They should be budgeted within, and that's what we try to do, is budget them within, like your textbook line item and things like that. Even though we've had to cut them, at least we had a line item there, so eventually we'll be able to fill it, fund it, and use it. We just haven't gotten that far yet.
okay,
I can tell you at Sellersville Middle School, we had instruments repaired this year.
okay.
For sure. I have to get back to on where it got charged to.
Yeah.
But we definitely had instruments fixed this year.
Okay, and then just, just wondering, you want these kids to have something that they, hobby and things that they want, and we want to foster that as best as possible.
Absolutely.
One of the things I wanted to ask about is, I know when we have our first meeting of the month and we recognize people within the community, I know that I know that right now with this financial shortfall that we're in, there are local nonprofits that are in fact taking it upon themselves to help out some of the schools and departments. Could we start to, like, I know, for example, there was a high school received almost $2,000 for circuit boards for their computers. I don't know what project it was. I just know that a nonprofit did it. Could we incentivize some of those local nonprofits that are reaching out to the community because there is a shortfall, maybe in acknowledging them in it? Not that that's why they're doing it, but I think that, there are people that see the need and want to help out where they can. And I think that would be a great step to, we need it. And if anything, it would, I think, highlight where, especially some of these programs that are needing a little bit, and we are in a financial crisis, that I just think it's nice to say thank you and publicly. So if people can share when they do and help certain things, I think it'd be nice in those meetings to highlight them and let them come in, kind of like the Energizer Bunny or something else, a new award. But I don't know, just to recognize them. I think right now everyone's kind of trying to do what they can where they can, and 2,000 here, 1,000 there. It all adds up.
It definitely adds up, and as I said, next time in my comments, I actually have a big check that I'm going to share and say thank you to one of our partners who has paid off some of our outstanding balances for food service, which we have lots of partners in the community. When we do know, I will tell you, when I'm notified, I write them a personal note that says thank you. We get school donations and things like that. So certainly we can put something out to principals that said, hey, let us know so that we can verbalize that, write them a personal note, and recognize them.
And then I think that was it. I had taken some notes on my phone. Of course I don't. Let's see. MAVE Insurance is increasing $65,000 for property and vehicles. It was an increase of $65,000 this year. What is that? Is that just cost of business? Is that?
So that's actually one area that may go down.
Okay.
Again, we're waiting for the final projections to come from MAVE. And at the beginning of the year, they told us to budget for a 15% increase. However, the last meeting that I was in with MAVE, those numbers look like they're going to be coming back down a little bit, and it's not going to be that 15% increase that we were indicated.
Okay.
We
You
really
can be
won't know
part
those
of-
final numbers for a while. Unfortunately, like last year, we had our projections all set, and then we got a bill of $80,000 more than what they had projected. So I think they were being overly cautious this year to aim very high in those, and now they're trying to back off of them a little bit, which is fine. I'd much rather them aim really high and tell us we're going to have a larger increase than hit me on the other side and say, oh, by the way, you owe $80,000 more. So, but we unfortunately won't have those numbers probably till May. But
So even with MABE, as all the counties and communities coming together, using them with their insurance, we're still getting hammered with that big of increases. Isn't this being part of MABE, part of these insurances to collaboratively come together so that we don't have these massive costs and these massive increases? So if that's the case, we're still getting these increases.
We are.
Can we see what outside?
Everybody's getting these increases.
I'm aware of that, but I'm saying, is it really starting to become that cost of effective to go through their insurance without possibly seeing outside insurance companies just getting quotes or seeing their prices? Have we done that lately just to verify, just to do our due diligence?
I'm certain MABE probably has done that, but we can
I'm
look
talking
into
about
it.
outside of MABE.
No, I know. I'm sure that I'm sure they track that all through Bolton and in relation to Bolton. I'm sure they run reports and track that. I'd have to go back and look at that most recent audit, which was, I have it. So I'll look at it and I can certainly share the audit with you.
Right.
But I'm sure that's in there. But no, I think that point well taken, but healthcare is in a crisis.
Oh yeah, track.
So,
That's everything.
it's
It's
a-
not just healthcare, it's insurance
Yeah,
across the board.
and
Okay.
we,
Yes.
being 1,250 strong, but I know we're adding the county too, so say whatever, let's just use a round number, 2,000 strong does not compare to being thousands and thousands strong. And so I don't know that it would be advantageous, but we can certainly look at it to see. And if we think that it's advantageous, do the homework and bring it to the board and go out on our own.
Because we were talking about the property and vehicle liability. That's what we were talking about here. But I was just asking, have we done our due diligence lately? Because if we're seeing 15% or 10 to 15% year over year increases through MABE, that being part of that organization with all of the counties was supposed to be advantageous. But if we keep seeing that, is that really much of a difference if we're on our own and then we have more control? We have other things we can look at instead of being, I'm just,
Sure, no.
I mean, very well, they could come back and it's drastically more, cool, maybe great.
Yep.
I'm just, when was the last time we did as a county our due diligence to go look at it and see what the cost is and if it is effective to actually go through the MABE insurance or not? If
So
it is, then great, but if not,
The last ESMIC claims audit, because the claims are what drive your premiums, was done on August 31st of 2019. So that's something that I
6
think we
years.
can look at. Yeah. And this one, and then the Eastern Shore Consortium was done on August 31st of 2022. So I think they're on a cycle, to be honest with you. But happy to share that information and happy to look more into it for sure.
Which means there should be one this year. It's not every 3 years.
Maybe, yeah.
And
sometimes insurance companies, if you have a large conglomerate, just start jacking up the price. Not saying they're doing it here, but
Could
it's
be.
been known to happen. So if they keep playing games with MABE because they know they're just gonna come back to them every single year, maybe that route might not be the best route to go anymore. And yes, I'm sitting here bashing insurance companies. I think we all can because, yes. Don't
my
wanna
last
have a lot.
questions. 2 questions. We'll wrap it up. I had a whole bunch of them, so this is good. Only $1,800 increase for custodial salaries. Is that just normal? They're not like, do they not have contracts? Like, there's
That's not-
14 schools.
Hold on.
I'd have to go find the page. I just
That's
read
okay,
a
we can
note
find
of, there was only an $1,800 increase.
It's an operation.
That's not true.
Custodial salaries on page 40.
Oh, okay. So, right, a lot of attrition within the custodial realm. So the difference between someone starting newer versus someone who's more veteran and has been here for a longer period of time. There's also in their contracts they have some add-ons that are attached to their salaries for being here for longevities. So in addition to the salary, there's some additional bonuses that are added each year. So I'm suspecting, and we looked at this one when we were working on the budget. There's been a lot more folks coming in recently.
Okay.
So they just haven't had the increase.
That's right. So this is the attrition thing.
Right.
So when the folks at the top of the scale leave and the new folks come in, there's always going to be a difference. Oftentimes, in the teacher world, it often happens all at the same time at the end of the school year. The custodial staff, it's not always the same time of the year. So.
We've actually struggled with our staff in that area. We have not been fully staffed this entire school year. And so it's definitely
Do we know the cause of that? Do we know, have they given reason? And do we know, is it something that as a school district we're doing? I know it's usually a high turnover job, but I wasn't sure if there's some things that we could do better so that we don't have.
A lot have retired. They have, they have taken a second job and they're retiring. Others are just very transient in nature. They leave this job, they may pick up another job, they might move out of state, their housing has changed, so there's a variety of reasons for them.
Are they hourly or salary?
Their salary,
Salary?
full-time salary.
We have a contract with that organization though, right?
Yes.
Aren't there, what are they, the group 3?
Their support too.
Support
And,
two?
and everyone got their step and their scale got advanced. So, but we look for it.
And is there a difference between salaries for employees that work during the day as opposed to like overnight? Or do we have overnight?
Yes, there's a second shift differential for work in the evening.
Okay.
Last question. $5,000 increase for special education. My question on that, let's see, it probably would help if I saw what that was. Equipment. Only a $5,000 increase in special education equipment. My question was over 14 schools. Like, is that like a placeholder just to make sure, like if that's funded separately? I was just wondering.
Right.
Find out where you are.
I know. Let me find it
I'll
myself.
find it.
I just didn't want to. I want to get it while we're on a roll. I just didn't know with having that many schools. Let me see, where would that be?
28.
Say that again?
28.
28.
Some of the MOI that's distributed to the school each year also comes through special ed. So like I can tell you at Sudlersville Middle School, we got about $5,000 of dedicated funds that came specifically to support the needs of the special education program. So that line, that allocation comes out of the big MOI line from category 4.
Okay.
So like each school gets an individual allocation for money for materials of instruction. They get an allocation for media. They get an allocation for special education.
Okay.
And that's a per pupil allocation.
Okay. Thank you.
Got a couple myself. First, I see budgets on each section for conferences and outside meetings. How many conferences, outside meetings are staff in each level doing? How much did they do this year?
So it varies because it's all based on content. And some of those are mandated by the state that they participate. So you have an English supervisor and they're expected to go to X amount of meetings during the year to make sure that they're up to standard on what the expectations are for curriculum at the state level. So you have those types of conferences. Then you have conferences where you're, going for professional development, and it might be funded through a grant. So we have a schedule because not every content area goes to conferences every single year. We have a rotation. Some of them are going because they're getting AP trained. So we have certain coursework where you have to be updated on your skill set in order to maintain your certification to be a classroom teacher to teach that kind of content. Same thing in a lot of our STEM areas. So it really depends. We have teachers that go. We have our supervisors that go, and they go for just various reasons. But
So I would just add that this year we made the decision that we wouldn't fund anybody going to conferences out of the local budget. The only exception that we might find locally are a few folks for the career coaching program for the 6 to 12 that's Blueprint associated, that is in the operating budget, but kind of operates like a grant. So those folks did do a conference or two, the people in the schools and our administrator here. Mostly any money we spent this year, meetings and conferences out of the operating budget, not grants, would have been just associated travel with the state meetings roughly monthly. And they rotate virtual and in person.
and they're not like overnight.
No, they're not
They're
overnight.
usually a day trip, so you're
Right,
paying for
right.
mileage, you're paying for tolls, and you're paying for parking.
I just see it in every single section.
It is.
That,
And
You will
even though
see
it's
it.
like $7,000 or $8,000, it adds up.
It definitely
So I
does.
was just curious how much of that, again, that's where I was saying, how much of that is actually being spent?
Right. Well,
where
this
are
year we
going on?
froze just about everything.
Right.
So I would
Next year,
encourage you
That
to
was my next question is,
Yep.
is there possibility for virtual? I'm not trying to take it away because I'm all about being in person.
No.
Again, we're just in a
Well, like
next couple years,
e-finance, we
right?
have people that are doing professional development for
Yeah.
e-finance, which is super important, right?
Right.
So, and a lot of that is virtual.
As long as we're on the track of like freezing it for now, finding the virtual training for the next year or two until we can
So
get
can I
through
give an
this
example
blueprint.
one?
Sure.
Meetings,
So like,
I'm sorry.
no, I want to point out, so like the expenditure report I sent you all, like the mid-level, I just picked a category. Meetings and conferences, this is the February report I sent you all. 7,700 was like budgeted, we asked to freeze it, it's still got $5,000 roughly left. So you're talking, that's $2,000 for the mileage for the supervisors to go to wherever they were
Right.
rotating around.
So if we see that from this year and we keep it frozen and we roughly know that each one of these pots that's spread out could save us $5,000, $4,000, that could be an extra $20,000 or $30,000 at the end of the year.
That's what we talked about today. And
Absolutely.
like, we also talked about like recruitment. So last year we hired 7 teachers. You know, Michael is not going out physically recruiting like we typically do, or taking teams to different colleges to recruit because we know we don't have positions to fill. So I think you have $8,500 in that category. So today we talked about it. Is that something that we freeze that line item, knowing that we're not going to need it for next year? So those are the conversations we had today. Yeah. They're
That's-
really good
That's what I'm
conversations.
trying to get in, because as we start adding that up, you know, that's
5,000 here, 8,000 there.
right. You know, a couple of
Yep.
those where
Right
we got
on.
another person left, you know, on board.
Yeah.
And if we, like I said, I'm not trying to do that forever, but until we get past this
Absolutely.
6% increases, that we kind of stop treading water,
Yep.
we can slowly implement these items back in. But with the virtual learning situation, I feel like there's a lot more virtual situations. that we can-
Options.
Absolutely.
Well, the virtual conference will be charged to that line.
Yeah.
So whether it was they go to the meeting and pay for it to go there or stay there, whatever, it'd still be
Still
it'd still be
cheaper,
charged.
right,
as-
right.
But like
Like,
the
for
state
instance-
assistant superintendent meetings, only, I think half of them have been in person. The other half are virtual, and it's twofold. It's one, it's cost, and then it's also just our time of traveling.
Right. So the
But like
next question.
Well, I was going to say Title IX was a perfect example. Like by law, I have to be trained in Title IX. So I could have gone to a conference, spent 2 days away, whatever that cost would be, or I did it online, 6 hours. It was painful, but I did it online, and it was, I don't know, it was $500 or $600 or something. So, you know, but it's a mandated thing I have
Right,
to
correct.
do. So
Completely understand that, and
you know
it's
what I mean? So, like,
appreciated because
yes.
that saves thousands of dollars.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But going into that, then I see a mileage and travel budget item in each pot.
Mm-hmm.
But within the conferences and such, that talks about the mileage and travel. So now we have that being spent in 2 different sections within each 2 pots. And so can we kind of go in and explain the fact that if you got conferences, outside meetings, it pays for the travel, the overnight costs and everything, but then you have mile and travel budget, does that not come out of that budget? Because now you're adding that up in the same.
The auto allowance is contracted for travel within the district.
Okay.
So the meetings and conferences is for any travel as soon as they leave county lines.
Tracking, makes sense.
And it is a contractual responsibility for us.
Right.
I mean,
I wasn't
for
trying, I'm trying to.
employees.
But that's
See
the,
travel budget
and that's the reason for the
within
2
county,
lines.
That
everything
one
else
in
outside.
county, okay, yep.
Yep.
And have we tracked where we're at with that? How much is being used per level? I saw administration, mid-level and such. Have we seen where they're at?
Auto or meetings and conferences?
Oh, I'm sorry, the mileage and travel budget, the auto,
The auto allowance is a contracted set rate for everybody.
that rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So
within
that
their
would be
That's within the union contract?
negotiated
Okay.
agreement, correct. So that would
So-
be encumbered for the year.
Exactly. It's encumbered for the year. We know what the cost
That
is
can't
up
change till
front,
next month.
and we can't arbitrarily
Correct.
change it.
Yeah, that would be something through negotiations.
Tracking. Another question I had that I keep seeing also repeatedly is subscriptions and dues. So every single level, I'm seeing the subscriptions and dues, and that's adding up significantly throughout. What are some of the subscriptions? What are some of the dues we're paying? Because if we got subscriptions going into, say, PowerShell or some other things,
Right.
wouldn't that be going into a different pot of money? What are these? What subscriptions and dues are these ones being talked about?
So some of the dues are like, we are a part of MABE so that you all can participate in different, you know, opportunities. And so that is something that we pay for every year. We pay for ESMIC, we pay for PASAM. So those are some of the things that, but we also have subscriptions as it relates to like Agile Mine and things like that that are under contracted services, you know,
Trying
so.
to think of an example for my area for the dues.
Yeah,
Off the
so
top of
like,
my head.
some of them, some of our like textbooks have subscriptions to them where you pay a fee for the students to be able to access materials online. So those are on various contracts. Trying to think of some more examples for you. So.
So
like
here's this
Paradox
cost,
and-
cost for memberships to professional organizations and professional publications. So everything you mentioned sounds like it's going towards instruction.
It's professional learning.
Learning, right.
So, and like I'm looking at a couple of them right now, like the one in category 2 wasn't spent this year. So we froze that one and it just wasn't spent this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was an allocation to it. And so this is one of those things that when we go through the budget analysis, we will pick up. So some things are in the budget and, you know, they're charged to the correct place and they're right smack dab on target. Some things, we don't use as much because we knew we were kind of in a budget crunch. So I think this is one of those things when we go and look at, probably less than 40% of it was spent this year. But there are professional organizations that provide professional development through literature and this through membership that exists. The Special Education Department has a couple. I can tell you at Sellersville Middle School, we use some of our MRI dollars and even some of our Title I dollars to provide a bunch of the content-based journals to the teachers. So if you walk into the copy room, there's magazines hanging on the wall for them to go, and we highlight some articles, and they're really quick reads. So kind of a minimal cost for a staff of 50 sort of certificated people. So those are the kind of things that might go into that cost too.
Right.
And like for me, as part of my contract, like being a part of AASA, which gives me all the data points that I need and just provides me with professional development for myself, not having to go somewhere, but to get the journals and things like that to be able to share with staff. So those are some of the things that are in there as well.
And I wouldn't be surprised if like, so we have college board costs when we like pay for AP and things like that. That would be in like contracted services paying for the students' tests. But we actually have a small subscription for the year, which I would think
would fall under
should
there,
be under that due. I think it's like
And
$400.
there's another great point, trying to get teachers out to be trained to be AP teachers in each of the contents. So that would come out of the meetings and conferences budget.
Right,
And,
Right.
and some of those meetings are, so like those are not, some of them are virtual, some of them are not, but either way, they cost either way. And they're not cheap.
No, they're not. And as we were talking about it, the AP training, they have to have that as a qualification certification to be able to teach the course. And you have to have it every so many years. So we kind of have it on a cycle right now by content area to make sure that we're always keeping up. So every year we have teachers that go for AP training so that we don't have a situation where we have 10 teachers in 1 year that need to go. You know, we try to parse it out year to year so that's more equal and more of a line item that's, you know, in the budget.
So these numbers here, I'm seeing just under the central office or administration section, $27,500 just for subscriptions and dues. I'm assuming this year, since we froze a lot of things, probably shouldn't assume, but that might not even come remotely close, because then I see subscription dues at other
They're-
levels,
and
you know,
they're-
that's gonna continually
they're
add up.
everywhere.
What
It
number
seems
did you
pretty
say?
substantial. That's page 12.
I actually think that one is over this year because that's our MABE and PASAM that went up this year.
Yeah, PASAM went up this year by,
What is PASAM?
it's the Public School Superintendents Association for Maryland.
Okay.
And it's just the 24 superintendents with a director, and we do advocacy, lobbying, we influence legislation,
Similar to MABE.
very similar to me.
And how much does MABE charge each, or like our school district every year? What does that cost?
We just got the
At
bill.
60, I don't,
We got an estimate just recently.
what's our MABE dues every year? Do you know?
The membership, or are you looking for the other charges?
Just the membership,
Just
I
the
believe, is the
membership.
question.
The
I
annual
just saw
membership.
this.
We
I
just
think it's
got
from the
it.
very
We
beginning.
just got like a placeholder.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
It's a race.
See who finds it first?
No, I'm not gonna.
Fiscal year 25 was 20,000.
Oh, there you go, sorry.
Fiscal year 25.
Do you remember who,
Annual MABE dues.
do you remember who sent it?
Ann Smith, I believe.
Is that Ann?
You said 20,
22, you said?
20,486 for fiscal year 2025.
I don't know why somebody's floating a number around. It was like 65 or 70,000.
Yeah, no,
That
I
seemed,
know.
that's why I was asking. I'm like, that seemed extraordinarily high. So,
That was probably insurance costs.
okay. So, couple questions on just some of the positions that I've seen in here too.
Mhm.
What is the difference between an academic dean and one of the 10 folks that we have head of each department? What does an academic
Oh.
dean
So
comparatively?
So we have two academic deans and they're one at each high school. And their primary focus is to be data analysis. They do all the testing for the students. They essentially are the gatekeepers for every kid that walks across that stage. So they ensure that kids have all of their credits that they need by working with guidance counselors. As I said, they do all the testing, make sure that they've crossed every T, dotted every I, and that they put that cap and gown on and get across the stage. Different than a department chair would be just overseeing and working with their department to provide them support, whether it be for professional development.
The academic dean is in charge of the academic program at the school. So they're also going to oversee the quality of instruction at the school. They're going to be the leads on providing professional development to the teachers at each of the high schools. So they're administrators.
Where the assistant principals are often thought of like in charge of discipline in the schools, the deans at the high school level are really that
Academic.
instructional leader of the school.
And we have two great ones.
We do.
You do indeed.
And then career coaches.
I can,
Two
I
of
would
those,
like,
two on each.
I would like to handle that if possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the career coaches are part of the bucket that comes in, for the, the career counseling program, part of the blueprint. The money is carved out of the foundation amount. We set aside I think it's 63 odd dollars, per student that goes towards the career coaching program for grades 6 to 12. And we have a career coach that's right now placed at each high school. They're focused on that career counseling program, actually from 6 to 12, but we just have one place at each high school. So they run the high school program and the middle school program.
They also work with our CTE advisor and
Oh,
they
yeah.
work out in the community to make sure, like,
The chamber.
just recently, I don't know how many of you guys, did you attend the session where our seniors had a mock interviews and they practiced their 3-minute speech so that they can go on job interviews and
So that,
the people about jobs. I mean,
That was
they're
a-
there for our,
that was a joint program between the career coaches and our English department.
Yep.
Bringing that career counseling part, resume building, interview skills into the English 12 curriculum, practice their resume writing, their interview skills. They also set up at the middle school level, the junior achievement trips to Salisbury. They set up trips for our freshmen or sophomores, I believe, to go to tour Chesapeake and other colleges, those sorts of things, as well as job opportunities. They're organizing right now in conjunction with our Rotary Club, a job fair for seniors. I think it's at the end of April, it might be May. I forget off the top of my head, but they're doing programs like that.
Yeah, and we would not have any purple schools in our district if it wasn't directly for
Okay.
those two counselors.
So they're kind of, us growing up, wrap my head around it. They're kind of like what our guidance counselors were on, but like have taken that idea of it. When we were growing up, they were the ones that kind of taught you about careers, guided you on.
Yeah, the
When I
one-
was growing up, where I was,
They're a
so they've taken that but molded
But
it
they're
into
not-
something.
They're a supplement
Yeah.
to the guidance
Yeah.
counselors.
I kind of think of it like when I went off to college and I went to the career center there to kind of know what I wanted to do.
yeah.
That when I think of a college career center is exactly what I think of that has been developed at each high school, where students have an opportunity to go and be coached and guided and provided with opportunities so that they know what's out there so that they can kind of pick and choose what they want to do and then get the skills that they need in order to make that actually happen.
Correct.
That was
Mhm.
where I was at. That was our guidance counselor.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's why I was trying to wrap my head
We had
around.
a really good guidance counselors.
Yeah.
Mine
We had
wasn't
great
like that in high school, so good for you.
So just in case any just in case we didn't completely fund it, MABE dues are 20,471, and it represents a 0 increase from the year before. So,
For
same,
25, 26.
yeah, next year's the same as previous year.
Last question from me. What is the Time to Care Act healthcare?
We're gonna pass that one right to HR.
Gonna be excited to talk about.
Because I see a $10,000 increase and we keep going back to health.
If you
It's just,
Google it, it'll explain like,
It's heavy.
Way too
It
much.
is the state of Maryland's initiative for family and medical leave insurance, so that all employers with 15 or more actually, it's not even 50, have to provide paid leave for their employees of up to 12 weeks.
Is this in addition to supplemental or different than FMLA?
This is in addition to FMLA.
And that $10,000 marker is only what we're paying to MABE to be able to organize and figure out a formula for what it's gonna cost each district. So thank goodness
Yes.
that it
Maine
got
has
kicked.
created a Maryland State Consortium, which has over 200 entities that have
Not just public schools.
joined this consortium. It's all 24 school districts. It's 23 of the 24 counties. It's libraries, it's community colleges. They've all joined in because strength is in numbers here. What has happened there is that $10,000 increase is, this year MABE charged us a $10,000 fee to all the constituents as the overseer of this, because they are the ones that are going to be going out to bid to insurance organizations that are going to provide this service for the 200 plus entities. What it boils down to, really glad you asked this question. What it boils down to, though, is that at some point, and right now it's appears to be 2027 because it's been kicked down the road. Because again, it is a huge budgetary issue for the state, and it's going to be a budgetary issue for local jurisdictions.
go figure.
That we will have to negotiate with the association as to what the percentage is that the employer will contribute, plus what the employee will contribute, because starting in whenever the kicking that can down the road drop dead date is, employees, all employees are going to have to contribute a percentage into this fund, and then employers are going to have to contribute whatever is negotiated into this fund to help fund the employees when they take the family and medical leave insurance time off.
So it's gonna be
In
a
other words,
lot
it's
bigger.
another state mandated insurance costs.
Yes.
So we're back to insurance and we're back to state taking more money from us.
Bingo.
Yes.
but the only good thing about it is we won't have to foot the bill, right? If they have to pay something into it, we won't be
Employees
totally,
will pay some, but yes, there will be a
And
cost.
for employees.
yeah, but not the full, like,
Not
the,
Not the
but
full.
that will be negotiated.
okay.
But it's gonna be a lot more money than $10,000.
That's
Just-
what I
yeah,
was gonna ask.
yeah.
So do we have an idea?
Have no
Because if
idea.
we're looking at that and we're looking at 2027, we might as well start preparing now. If
Right.
kicking the can down the road, or we can just go kick on some doors and be like, hey, X-nay this bill, let's,
That's why we're paying MABE to actually do it for us. So it's a very complicated thing and it takes a lot of power and numbers, and that's why
And
they
one of
are
the
employing
reasons-
people to specifically do that for us. That's what that
Right.
$10,000 goes to specifically
A
employ.
lot of government entities like us, we already provide great insurance leave
Correct.
for our
Right.
employees. And the conception here is that the intent was not for those that already have great insurance, it's for those that don't. So there's a big pushback at the local levels that this is going to really hurt state and local, but it's also gonna hurt your small businesses because they're
Yeah.
going to be impacted too. Because you think of a restaurant, their servers are going to qualify for this because it is all employees. So you think of a server or someone that might have 2 or 3 jobs, each of their entities are going to have to track how much time they've worked and then how much time they get.
We've really tried to state a case to carve education out because our employees are provided with viable options right now within the insurance that we have and the FMLA provisions that we have, but we have not been successful in that.
It is definitely something to keep an eye on.
Oh, yes.
Like Ms. Cape said, if you Google it, it is a hot item at the state.
Who's the lobbyist? Just throw that out there. Somebody
Pull up the list, I'll show you. Show you.
not to go down that rabbit hole, but.
Please don't.
I had a
But just stay tuned on more information on that.
Because there was no limit on like what you make, right? It was across the board for anybody. Like you said, small business, yeah.
But the proportion of what
to
you will
insurance
be
again.
paid is
Is proportionate to your pay.
Okay.
But it's not
It's
going to,
not 100%, and there's a max that you can get.
So the lower you make, the more your employer is probably gonna have to contribute then.
it's not going to be just paying when the employees are taking the leave. There's a lot.
Intended consequence.
There's a lot to this, especially in the business we are with people taking that 12 weeks and then having a substitute cost on top for
Because
any
then their
position, not
has
just
to be held, right?
ill.
So the person is paid their full wages, and we have to pay for a substitute possibly to cover that.
Insurance
And
isn't
that's all
covering
on
that. part.
top of FMLA.
Yes.
So they could be out like 6 months plus.
Whatever the
Depending on-
whatever the maximum is.
Yes. Every year.
On top of like
Yeah,
disability.
because there's
leave
no,
act and all
that was
other
like, there was no limit how many, they could do it every year, essentially. There was no like cap on it,
stuff.
right?
Prioritizing people being able to just.
And they can do it for many different reasons, like they can do it to care for a parent, they can do it, so there is, there's a list of,
Small business.
I think military,
It's almost
care for a
everything
parent or
that's covered
child.
under FMLA is going to be covered under this.
Shouldn't be.
For every-
Actually, this is gonna be a fun topic for the next couple of years.
It is a hot button topic across the state. I know the HR directors and the CFOs at the school systems have said just what Dr. Kibler said, the enormity of this, just in people time and loss of instruction, that is an unintended consequence of this. You can't put a price tag on what that is going to be.
Let me guess, the state's gonna actually take some of our funding and actually create an organization and hire more people up there too.
Please do not give them any more ideas.
Just saying, seems to be their status quo lately.
Don't help.
I have a question that Kendra brought up before, with I don't know how to ask this. So with the schools, all the kids not having one-to-one computers, the question was brought up before about things like iReady. If they don't have one-to-one computers, is there a way that we can still track all that data? Are they still able to
So-
utilize?
Yeah, but they do have.
I was told some schools are not doing iReady because they don't have computers for the kids.
not true.
Okay.
No, so
All
the,
the kids have them, just not, the elementary school don't take them home.
Well, kindergarten and pre-K do not have one-to-one devices. At the elementary level, they do not take them home. But all of our students have access to iReady and
And
we
they're all
track
using
that data 3 times a year.
Okay.
and what they're doing is like, I might get the grade level wrong, but I believe like what CES will do, Centerville Elementary, is like when the kindergarten classes are ready to do like their iReady exams, they'll borrow like the second grade class sets for a couple of days and things like that. And that's how it works.
So the schools, so K through, sorry, not to hijack.
No, it was your question. I just
Okay,
wanted to
so
bring it
yeah,
back up
thank
'cause
you.
I
So
remember
K
it.
through 2 does iReady and does not take computers home, correct?
K to 4.
Okay. Okay. And there's not any elementary schools that are not participating in iReady due to lack of computer access.
They're all participating. We've reviewed all the data.
Okay.
We just finished our mid-year data analysis.
It's actually one of our biggest data points when we're going on our school visits, teachers, SLOs, their learning outcomes, the principals' learning outcomes
Providing those
for their evaluations are all based off of iReady, basically.
And how is it set up in the schools? Like, because I know not because they don't have their own computers like the older kids do. Is it like there's a computer lab? Because I know,
They do have their own computers.
okay, because I know at Ken Island
Except for
Elementary,
kindergarten and pre-K.
they share. What? What are you laughing at?
No,
No, if you go into a first grade classroom, they'll have like their stacks
they're
of,
stacked,
they're stacked of computers.
At my kids' particular school, the 3 grades have to share like 16 computers.
That should not be happening.
That is
That does not.
happening. So that's why, so then it led me down a rabbit hole of finding out, and was told that some other schools were not doing it because they didn't have computer access, but even specifically, I was told that Canal Elementary is sharing it between all 3 grade levels, which is creating a bit of an issue because they had some computers that went down and because we didn't have the money to buy them, which I understand. So now they have to share them. So not every room has theirs. It's like they have to stagger their times.
We can look into that, if
certainly
that's
look
okay.
into that.
Okay, thank you.
That on the list.
So I have the big question. We're $2.6 million in the hole. Do we have plans to, obviously, we're trying to come up with the money, mitigate it, but what are we doing to get even? What is the process? What are ideas to get even?
Yeah, so we met with our entire staff today and have a great list and starting point of, walking through the entire document of what things can we cut that is outside of salaries. And then we have created basically where can we cut within salaries as it relates to enrollment, because that's what we would do first, meaning lower enrollment. Can you pull a teacher from that to make that more equitable? And just in and of itself, different positions. So we have a list and basically a cutoff point for, basically it's prioritized. So if we are able to make up $863,000 out of all the contracted services and tuition reimbursement or recruitment and all that, then whatever that deficit is from there, we have a priority list of staffing and how we would address it. And at this point, we have 16 retirements.
10
Sorry.
retirements,
I'm sorry,
3
10.
resignations. And that's just on the teacher side. We have 5 A&S administrative.
That's where I got the
positions
15, so.
that have submitted retirement.
So we got 18 total that are leaving our district.
That we know of. We
Right.
have a few.
As of now,
that
like,
As of right
might be
now,
leaving.
right.
We also have I think there's about 6 of our support staff that have intended their retirement at the end of the year. So, again, that's a snapshot of today on March the 19th of where we are. So that number will probably grow some, but again, we're not going to bank everything on that. We have to look at where the cuts are going to come before we start looking at the numbers of the people that we don't have to backfill.
And that's
when do they,
May 1st for,
Uh,
if you have
For our
a non-tenured or a conditional.
So they have to let us know by
employee,
May
they have to
1st.
know by May 1st.
Okay.
That's our first deadline.
Okay.
And then the deadlines, move out from there.
So theoretically, your thoughts are close to 24, but 18 for sure right now.
Oh, you're saying yes,
Yes.
18 for sure, yes.
They have already give notice, they're retiring, they're leaving 18.
Correct,
The thought is possibly 6 more that we might know by May 1st.
So we're
yes,
talking about
20.
1.8 million right now. It
Right,
would
yeah,
be
yeah, I'm sorry.
18.
That's what I'm saying.
yes.
So then we're only in the hole, how much? Would you say 24?
We're still in the
2.4?
Period, because
I know.
if we can still save money and you can backfill those positions, that should be a priority. We shouldn't just focus on,
No, I agree completely.
right, so if we can save that money and
Exactly,
They'll be
that's
able
the
to backfill
exercise
this,
of
that's
going
the-
line item by
right.
line item
Yeah.
and seeing what, if any, we can trim, cut, freeze, push to another
Right.
year, that type of thing, yes.
because we're already short-staffed, we don't want less people out just because we got them retiring. I know that's the easiest way to make up the budget, but at the same time, we're gonna help our teachers and our staff.
We're gonna put the work in to make sure that we
Right.
can preserve as many positions as we can.
Yes.
And I saw a lot of the questions we had when we sat down last Friday, the 5 of us, and a lot of the questions I already brought up, you said you were already on it. So I appreciate your work, how fast you've dove in. I think we all do, because all the questions I had, you're like, saw it, done it, on it, working on it. You were on top of everything, so we greatly appreciate you stepping in, diving head first. You're probably at the bottom, not even treading water yet, so we appreciate it.
Of course.
So I do have a question. We have a request for a 5-minute break. How many more questions are out there? Are we close to the end, or we have more time?
I
And
think
should
we're
we take
finally
a
getting, I
5-minute
think we're
break?
finally getting to the crux of it, like the.
Yeah, that was my last big question. What are we doing to fix it now? We asked all these
Now
questions.
it's like,
what
now
do
that
we-
we've asked the.
So, and then the last one is whenever you do get the numbers of the current, where we're at spending, so we can see it, so we can actually start looking at those numbers, see where we're at. If we're continually over, what do we got to do to fix it? Situation. So that's my only request.
So with that said, we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 7 o'clock and continue. And sorry,
We are live.
we are live. We're live. Let's begin. All right. People with their list of questions. Let's roll.
I'm done my questions.
I did my own questions.
Do you have any more, Ms. Carey?
I do. Substitutes, $975,000. That is a lot of money when we are, especially since talking about that. I don't know, like, there's gotta be something else, like, it's something, I realize every once in a while teachers have to take off, but that just seems, I don't,
How many of those are full-time?
Full-time subs?
Yeah, like we have a couple, but we don't have
There
any.
aren't any anymore.
Okay.
So-
By the way, that was funded through a grant as well, and when that money dried, we do not have full-time subs. So our subs now are all day-to-day.
so that would be the ideal, wouldn't it, to have like 2 subs for each school and just make it work? I mean, or what were the full
It
times?
would help, the full-time subs would help. They certainly would not stop the need. Because you have to think, any absence, whether it be, my child is sick, I can't come in, or I just gave birth and now I'm out 8 weeks, or, there's so many variations with, and I'm just thinking, because predominantly we get subs for teachers. We have roughly 600 teachers. They get 10 days of sick leave a year,
And 4 personal leave days.
personal leave days. So,
That's 14 days a year.
They get essentially they get 14
yeah, but
days.
the opportunity, and not all take, some take more. But yes, it is a problem. And we have, I want to say we have 20 or 30 more substitutes this year than we did last year. Our numbers are now going back to where they were pre-COVID.
But never enough.
Or what, the numbers of subs that we have to come in.
And I would
mean,
just like to go on record and saying that before Dr. Salins got here, when my child was still in school, sitting in the auditorium, because there is no substitute and your teacher's not in, is not acceptable.
I don't know. I think for middle school and high school, when they've got their work on a Chromebook and there's not much going on, a sub can't teach calculus. A sub can't teach those kind of things. I think that we could look at, I mean, it's just, grouping them,
You
putting
give
them
us data
somewhere.
like back in 2022 or maybe early 2023 about the absenteeism rate at every school and like what the average was per each school per day?
I did it based on the district numbers.
Okay,
But yes,
because it was pretty, like, it was pretty high.
It was.
Are there any incentives for teachers to not utilize their leave?
Well, we
I said
we
that we-
actually had incentives
Extra
before
leave.
COVID, but it's really, we did away with those just because you don't necessarily want to incentivize someone coming to work sick with everything that we've gone through.
Yeah, no, I
with COVID.
agree.
I mean, that's why, we
Yeah.
did have it. We used to run like incentives where it's like, if you didn't this month, then you get this whatever perk or whatever, 90-minute out early or whatever.
I'm just wondering if it would translate to not needing as much money if they were incentivized to not utilize it. But to your point, I get it.
I
with
think
COVID.
that the incentive that they should be looking at as a 10-month employee is if you have 209 sick days, that equates to a whole year's worth of service, which absolutely impacts your pension. But communicating that and getting them to understand that sometimes is challenging. They really, I think the work has just changed. The attitude towards work has changed post-COVID. And people look at it as my time and I'm going to take my time. And they don't necessarily look at building up their time.
Instead of banking it.
Instead of banking it and building it up to where you can use it in your retirement, they see that it's 14 days. I work 10 months as a certified teacher. I get 14 days. It's my right to take my time. Yeah.
And when,
But it is.
were
It
we
is
ever?
their way, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is.
Right, but we try to keep the kids in school and we want them to come and we get paid on the
I
kids
think-
coming. So, I mean, they do
I think the
follow an
problem
example.
is outside of the 14 days, there's sick leave, there's other things that, it's outside of just the 14 days is from what I'm understanding, what I've heard in the county is teachers are, the sick leave, it's more than, it's happening a lot more, or it's the days that are unplanned. It's, I'm calling out in the morning, which sometimes we can't fix, but it's times where it's not giving the schools the proper time to plan for their absence. And that's starting to become a problem. Granted, you might be able to fix that in-house, or you might have to get a substitute, but sometimes that can be mitigated. It's the amount of times that people calling morning of, I'm not coming in. And I've, again, I take everything I hear outside with a grain of salt, so I'll bring it here, ask the people that know, is that's starting to become the issue more than anything.
Look, so in my experience, our teachers come to work as often as they can, and they work really hard to support our students. The paraeducators, the guidance counselors, the administrators, the teachers, everybody, I do think they do their very best to be here all the time. We do not have enough substitute teachers to go around. However, the substitute teachers that do show up and do participate, and at Southern Middle School, we had a handful of, they came very often. One such comes just about every single day, and she's there 175 days probably this year. With that said, that line also encumbers dollars that we pay teachers to cover classes as well. So there is no substitute for a teacher in the classroom. There isn't. The instruction's not the same when the classroom teacher is not sitting there. I will tell you, I would do nearly anything to not have 3 classrooms sitting in the cafeteria trying to do something with a Chromebook. That is a recipe for a disaster, and all the administrators all across our district do not subscribe to that idea. Has it ever happened? It absolutely has. Is it a common practice? It is not. With that said, that line also has extra dollars attached to it right this very second. It's part of the conversation that we're gonna have to figure out what is the balance of the budget with this. We added more, it's my understanding, we added more dollars to this line last year to account for the loss of the building substitutes, which was a really awesome resource, a consistent resource, and one that added more consistency to instruction when teachers were out. So this is one of those things we will also go back, but this one doesn't have any trend data yet because the 2 years prior to, we had building subs in our buildings.
But
And
I know, I want to
COVID
add,
before
I do,
that.
it does have data to it because we had the permanent subs in every school.
Right.
We spent $640,000 in FY '24 on teacher substitutes, $755,000 in FY '23. So when the grant ran out and we had to get rid of the permanent subs in every building, we did add $250,000 to the substitute line just in case, because of where that had been spent the last 2 years with a person permanently in the building every day.
Thank you for that.
So we were nervous about that. I will say, where we're tracking right now with the expenditure reports that we've been delivering to you, it does look like that 250 maybe didn't need to be there in that full amount. And I do, as Mr. Watkins pointed out, when we talk about cutting, I do think that we as a team have a decision to make. Do we want to roll that back, maybe
Scale back
100,
slightly.
maybe 125? It's a great point, but that is why we increased it so much last year, because we took 14 people out. 16, I'm sorry, we had 2 at the high school.
Yeah,
So
we
thank
had
you,
2
Mr. Dr. Knoll.
16.
So yeah, so that's why we did the extra, because we were spending more than the line items and we got rid of those 16 people. And I do think, okay, the way it's trending this year, maybe we did shoot a little high, and that's a place that we can come back.
And that, in that number is the $30 per hour that the teachers get to cover?
Yes.
Yes, correct.
So if we are spending, did those 16 individuals typically cover a majority of the substitute needed?
No.
So on top of those 16 individuals,
They were guaranteed
how
to
much,
be there.
how much more were we spending on substitutes?
640,000 in FY '24 and
On top of the
754,000,
16 salary?
because they were in a grant, so that's not pointing.
Right. So then, okay, I was just seeing if there was a cost analysis. We put those 16 folks, if it was 600,000 compared
This
to
is the-
900.
this is the
But now I'm
better-
seeing the difference. Yeah.
This is the better way.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to understand.
And we also,
Just the
I thought you
hourly.
meant 600,000 was for the 16 employees.
No.
Got you, track.
No, add another 500,000.
Yeah.
And we do also have staff that actually take leave without pay too. So that we haven't really brought up. So they do get personal leave. They also, get sick leave, obviously. But sometimes that's not enough and they take leave without pay. So that's also calculated in there as well.
I don't want this to deter, if they're watching, we don't want to deter the teachers from not taking leave. Like,
Oh, no,
by
not
all
at
means,
all.
like that's part of their job. They
It's-
deserve it.
right, they
I take
deserve
leave
it,
from work.
and
We
it's
all take leave
contractual.
by all means. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want them to get the wrong idea of this scenario.
No,
We're just trying to look at all the,
just
Right.
trying to
Oh,
make
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
that-
100%.
Brought it back
on
to the
track.
budget, because I do think
I mean,
That's a place that-
teaching is such a unique job. Most other
is.
jobs, you can stay home for a day, and it doesn't matter so much. You don't have 25,
Nothing better than the
25 people
teacher in
counting
the
on you
classroom.
in
Yes.
different periods.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right. Yep.
you have another one?
I did, pre-K. So if we don't get the funding from the state for that, is there any plan, or do you think we'll get the full funding for the
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
expansion? Okay.
Yeah, there's no plans to not, that hasn't been in any legislative piece to
Okay.
roll the pre-K back. The only difference is, there was a joint policy change or shift that, the Accountability and Implementation Board that oversees the blueprint did in partnership with the Maryland State Department of Education, where they would like to see private providers focus on pre-K3, allow us to step back from pre-K3. So the pilot pre-K3 classroom at Mattapique Elementary will not continue. You will see our pre-K expansion sort of come to a really big halt now. We've expanded to the full day. We are meeting the needs of tier 1 students like we're required to by law for the 4-year-olds. The only real expansion and increasing in classrooms that we would see from now on would be if a school has an influx of those tier 1 children, which we are watching one school for that.
I would have to say that if anything in the blueprint, if you said, what's one thing that has really worked? It's pre-K.
Yes.
It's really worked.
And if
The
you
kids
look-
are getting what they need. It's not universal.
was
I
gonna
wish
say,
it
but
was
it's
universal.
needs-based.
It's
So it's
right.
not
It's
universal.
by
So not
tiers.
every kid
It's
is
not universal.
eligible.
I wish it was universal, but I will guarantee you that we are meeting the intent of the law, that we are providing services to all of our 4-year-olds that qualify, and we're doing a really good job of it. And kudos to our elementary principals, to Angela Giebert, to Dr. Kibler for making a 3-year plan happen, because we basically tripled our full-time seats in 3 years, and that's quite a feat.
Classrooms are great. I was, last week, we went over to Centerville, and the classrooms are fantastic for the pre-K 4s.
And one of the reasons that Dr. Salen says that one's so funded so well is because of the pre-K expansion grant. It gave you money ahead of time to get the classroom set up, to get the teacher hired, because normally our funding per pupil lags a year.
Right.
So that was the only really piece of the blueprint that was front-loaded in a way. So it's been incredible. And the per pupil allotment for pre-K is really going up as well. It's jumping higher, it's jumping quicker than the other categories that we see in revenue. So it really is becoming self-sustaining.
It's Mr. Kerwin's baby.
It's a
so
great question, and I really
he continues
can't
to
tell I'm
push
passionate
it.
about it.
Yeah,
I'm proud
I
of
love
what
it.
we're doing and what our data
I'm
shows for
very
pre-K.
proud, and talk about being ready for K. We're doing it.
Nice. Mr. Dreyer,
I'm good.
I don't want to be funny, but you got some lines that aren't checked off of it.
Those ones don't have bubbles.
Okay, just double checking. I want to make sure
I have
you
a
got,
question.
make sure you got all your bubbles checked.
Bubbles
we-
checked.
Is there any way so when the commissioner budget meetings happen, is there any way we can link those dates to on our calendar? Is it linked on the Queen Anne's County public website so people can go to find that?
It is.
Linked on your events calendar, but we can certainly advertise that if you'd like.
If the public was going to look where do I find this?
Yeah, we can send that out to our community.
Okay.
I think
And the county posts it on their budget calendar.
Yep.
They have it listed, even those not just their meetings in the building, but the public.
you also get it in your mail when they send out the budget. They list all the places
Oh,
that
that's
they're
right.
going to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
But I did want to say that last year, our teachers, our administrators, and our parents attended all of those sessions and provided very moving content that helped us get additional funding. So very positive speeches, very informative speeches. I went to the one at Sudlettsville Middle. It was pretty good. So we got more because the community showed out and requested more. So keep doing what you're doing.
So this is actually an action item. So the board can choose to take a vote on this today. The board can choose to say, no, we want another meeting, or no, we want more time and we want to put the vote on April 2nd. So really, at this point, you're at a position where the board can choose to go ahead and vote this evening or postpone that vote at a meeting or just postpone it to April 2nd.
Is there anyone that has any additional questions that haven't been answered or they are concerned about anything that they see?
Just
That
the
would
missing
keep
2.6 million. I mean, so I get.
I get it,
Okay.
but we talked a little bit about that, but if we want to wait, we have the opportunity to, or we can vote for approval to move forward with what's in front of us, knowing these are not the final numbers because we don't have our final budgets from any of the sources that provide us money.
Personally, I would like to see the numbers that we've discussed. I would like to see where you've all sat down and tried to make cuts so we can understand a better idea instead of just saying, hey, we'll approve this knowing it's not. I would like to see more detail. I'd like to see where we're at spending this year, as well as possibly seeing the years before, seeing maybe a trend analysis that we spoke about. And I know it takes time. I know it's not going to happen overnight. But personally, I don't want to vote on something that I don't know. I'm just seeing approved and what has been. I haven't seen our actual spending numbers in all the categories. It'd be nice to see those to see where we're at, as well as seeing some of the things that you guys have spoke about, the cuts that you could make, what those cuts are, how much that has come to,
Yeah.
where our new deficit goes to
So-
before we just start voting yes on something.
So the cuts specifically would have to be a closed session
Correct,
item
yeah.
because it would be an HR.
Right.
But the actual expenditures to date, we could do in an open session. But I just want to make sure that everybody
Right, yeah,
understands
yeah,
that
I
we're not
understand.
going to be sitting here going, well, we're going to take this position and
Yeah,
we're going to cut it. And, you know, that's not something that we can do in open session.
Completely understandable, just so we can see where we're going with it before we make an approval. And that's my opinion. I don't know what everybody
But
else
are we
is.
gonna if we wait till the 2nd, is that even gonna change anything? Like, is this gonna look way different on April 2nd
Well-
than it does not now?
The way he goes, he was like, well,
Well, that's what-
Here's what we will do. I mean, so the next step to this is to go to look at the projections for this year. So we know over the last 5 years what we spent in each of the categories. So now is to go back and see what other things can we look at? What things are we not spending down to the speed at which we would normally have expected to spend down to? As far as the expenditures, I would recommend that if we were going to push a vote, then the next conversation we would have is we've scrubbed the budget and here are the places where I think we can skim from. And to have a conversation about, the substitute teacher is a great line to discuss. It's a pretty big line. But there's other things that we can talk about too. We can go deeper and have conversations about things that, we talked about adding more money to field trips. And whether that's a necessity or not, that's part of it. We don't have to put that extra money there. We all think it's a good idea, yes, but when it comes down to it, this may not be a necessity if we've not spent it all down this year. There also is a scenario in which the next time we come back together, we do have I think it's a fairly good opportunity for us to be there. I think we can do some analysis and at least have some different perspectives on that. There just wasn't enough time in the last 2.5 weeks to get to that level.
And
But we're getting there. We are.
And I want to set expectations for all of us for when we come back next time. And if we come back with a list of things that would either total to 2.6 or we go over that, I don't know that it's a realistic expectation to put all of that in the associated place in the budget book. Because as we talk about what goes where and things like that, you're talking about every little one of those decisions impacts the entire book. So right now we know we're working on that 2.6 number. It would be helpful if we could talk about that in a list style and make the adjustments to the book after we agree to where that 2.6 goes.
That's reasonable.
Because last year, the book had to be amended in June 17th again.
And
right?
and we will do that again.
Right, so.
Right, when we get the final
Yeah,
numbers.
it will.
But at least we have this, we can.
And that way, when Mr. Watkins and I and the executive team with Dr. Salins are working on this, we're focused on really scrubbing the budget for where we can find those savings instead of making sure that page 38 was reflected on 32. And
Right.
I would rather focus on the meat of the problem than display the book.
And it would be much easier to make that final decision and then go make all those,
Correct.
instead of
Updates and
make this, make
changes.
that, and then have to go back and change it. So, Rob, are you thinking April 2nd? Or are you thinking next Wednesday?
No.
What's the wish of the board?
So we-
Gotcha.
So you're thinking April 2nd?
Well, remind me, yes, April 2nd.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, give me a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Give us a couple weeks, let us go work on it. I think we can come back, and at that time, we can really talk through some specific items, but we also can talk in categories too, like the subscriptions and that sort of thing. So we can go down the list. I jotted down all the things you guys kind of brought up, so we'll take a look at those. Now, also, we had our administrators do this today too, and they also found some things that we thought were ancillary and potentially could be looked at as well. So we'll continue to do that work, and we'll come back with a list, and that list will be some sort of total number that we can pull from. That list at that time will probably not be in wages and salaries and people, it'll be in the other categories.
So I just caution us slightly that budget's typically to the commissioners by the end of March. So we certainly will reach out to them and say, hey, can you wait and give us 2 more days, whatever, a couple more days, so that it gives our new board an opportunity to really take a deeper dive. I don't think that will be a concern. They have clearly articulated that they're giving us 7, that they're giving us an additional 1.3 per pension, and that they have no plans or intentions of giving us additional funding above that. So I think this is a really good plan of action, is to work within the means of what they have given us, instead of trying to, say, well, let's wait and hope that they give us more, because then it's too late for us to do what we need to do. So I think we're on a really good place. I just want to let, I'll communicate with you as it relates to talking with Mr. Mon and letting him know, and hopefully, I think they'll be okay with the April 2nd.
Especially when they know we're working within the confines
Yeah,
of the $7 million.
Exactly. But I do want to articulate that at that point, we are going to have to take a vote. Like, I
No, we-
appreciate
we
it,
have to-
pushing it.
yeah.
Okay, but I just want to make sure that
100%.
we don't try to push that again. I know why we're doing it, and I think it's an excellent idea, and I think we're right on track, and I think it's going to give us the information we need to make a good decision, but we will definitely have to make a decision on April 2nd.
Real quick, just to verify. This reflects the current staff that we have now. This does not reflect, not saying we're trying to count on those 18 people because I don't want to budget for that, but that does not reflect them leaving, correct? Okay,
Correct.
just making sure.
Yes?
Okay.
Yep, very good point.
I think it's, for my first meeting, having somebody sitting there, I think it's been extremely helpful. You have done an amazing job of relaying the financial stuff, but it's been very nice having somebody sitting there and giving information. So, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, we appreciate it.
I'm not asking if anybody has any more questions because we're done.
We're good.
Mr. Strayer.
Oh, he's looking at me.
Because you always say I have one more question, but it's all good. You have anything? Are
I
you
am
good?
Nope, it's been my pleasure to serve you guys tonight.
Thank you.
Another thank you
I
to
like that.
Ms. Alexis
you're
for
welcome.
starting the meeting.
Do we have to motion to move this?
Yes, we do.
Okay. You want me to
Um,
make a motion?
Can I get a motion?
I
Yes?
think we can just not take action on it.
No
And
action?
then-
Okay.
Right,
We'll
we are.
set it, but we don't need to have a motion.
Okay.
We can just.
Oh, I
we
was
can
looking
just-
for a motion to
Well, you have to
close.
go, now you have to go to future meetings. You have to go to future meetings first, and then you can take a motion to close.
Future meetings. I should have just let Alexis run this. Our next meeting
That
will
back
be the 6 o'clock Board of Ed, April 2nd, 2025. See you there.
Thanks.
I make
Motion
a
to adjourn.
Motion, the Queen Anne's County Board of Education adjourn the March 19th, 2025 budget work session at 7:25 PM.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So be it.
Great.